Hey, this is Stats. Just a quick note before we start the podcast. I did make a little mistake during this episode. The privacy limitations on player statistics that have been changed recently to allow clans to access private profiles. I actually got that wrong in the podcast, and there is actually a separate option where you can make your private profile private also to your clan. You can have either global privacy with access to the clan, or you can have global privacy with also privacy towards your clan. So just be aware that that extra setting is there if you want to set it. Okay, here we go. Hello and welcome to StatsThonk episode 7. This is a slightly different episode because usually we're recording this offline, but actually right now I am live on Twitch, and we're recording this live in front of a studio audience.
With canned laughter.
with canned laughter. So a bit of an experiment for us. We're not going to be interacting with chat, so if you're watching this live, like I've said, we are just going to be straight up recording the podcast. And then I'll be editing it after the stream and then uploading it at some point. So we're recording this on Wednesday the 28th. Hopefully I'll get it out to you on the Thursday. And today's topic is going to be game mods. Now that's mods in terms of modifications, not mods as in moderators. So we're talking about bits of software or code or images or whatever that you can apply to your game in order to modify it cosmetically or in terms of the way that it works above the vanilla game. And if you hear any of us use the word vanilla, particularly me, because I've come from the IT industry and vanilla is a really common term in IT, vanilla just means the standard base product. So if you hear me say vanilla, that's what I mean. So vanilla would be unmodified. And so here to discuss the topic, as usual, we've got Mr. Killerbin. Hello, Mr. Killerbin.
Good evening, Mr. Stats.
And hello, Mr. Painezor.
Hello.
Hello. So I thought what we'd do first of all is just give a little bit of information, and I'm actually going to do, at some point in the very near future, I'm going to do a tutorial on YouTube about how to use Aslanes, which is one of the places that you can get mods. One of the other places that you can get mods is the official ModStation, which I've never actually used myself. But I think it's pretty easy to find. I think if you just Google World of Warships ModStation, then it will be there. I'll try and stick the link in the description on the places that I can do that. Aslanes is aslain.com, aslain.com. And you can go to his website, go to the World of Warships section, and you can read about how to install those mods. And eventually I will get a YouTube tutorial done, so watch out on my YouTube channel for that. I mean, we'll talk about this in a second, but which ones have you used, guys? Have you used both?
Only ever Aslan's.
Only ever Aslan's and ones that I've flipped in myself.
Okay, yeah, so the third category is self-made. So those, I've modified my achievements with images of various people. I'm actually now installing those automatically through Aslanes because I've remembered that that's a thing. It's really easy. You just package it up as a zip file, you stick it into the Aslane installer, and it just installs it with the rest of your mods, which is really cool. But I've never used ModStation. I need to do that at some point to get the experience. And Killerbin, did you say?
I was going to ask a question I don't know the answer to. ModStation was a later development, wasn't it?
Yes.
That explains why.
Yeah, it was. And that's the same reason that I use Aslane is just it was the first one that I came across. It was before ModStation existed. So I've just never had a reason. Yeah, I've just never had a reason to switch, really. But I understand from talking to people who use ModStation that the selection of mods in ModStation is maybe slightly fewer. But I think the difference is that ModStation is curated by Wargaming directly, although the mods obviously are made by the community. Whereas Aslane is curated by Aslane, the developer himself. And he's not Wargaming, he's third party, he's a community member, but is heavily integrated into the moderation community and program, and is an official member of the modder program that Wargaming have. It's a bit like the CC program or the Super Test program. There's a program for game modders, and so anything that you get through ModStation, any mods that you get through Aslane, they're not, nothing is 100% guaranteed to be completely safe. But in terms of not triggering things like anti-cheat, and in terms of not giving you horrible viruses, they're pretty safe. Pretty safe. What is not safe, Mr. Painezor?
Downloading illegal mods?
Yes. So the reason I'm asking him is because earlier he was like, "Oh, what about illegal mods?" Like, "Oh yeah, actually, that's a good point. We should include that." Yeah, please don't use mods that are not from ModStation, Aslane, or something that you've made yourself, because the chances of that being in some way illegal or malicious, the chances of you getting your account banned because of it is much, much higher.
Also, there's a very good chance that these mods come with baked-in little vulnerabilities that are going to affect your computer as well. You know,
Exactly.
yeah, it's just don't do it. Be safe.
Yeah,
be
don't do it.
sensible.
And also, I think if you do install a mod that's from the ModStation or Aslane, and it causes you to have some kind of cheat ban applied, you've probably got a much higher chance of getting that ban repealed. Repealed? Is that the right word?
Sure.
Yeah, repealed is the correct
Repealed,
term.
yeah. Because you can say, "Hey, no, I got this from one of the endorsed places." You're probably going to be okay. If you get it from some, dodgy Chinese forum, you're probably not going to have the same conversation with Wargaming. So, yeah, don't do that. And if you're a bit of a developer and you want to try and make your own mods, go for it, but just be aware that you could fall foul of being labeled by the programming as a cheat. I don't think there's that much in the way of anti-cheat in the game, but you never know. So just be careful. And if you make something useful, if you're a modder and you make something useful, definitely get in touch with Aslane, or get in touch with the ModStation people from Wargaming and see if you can get it included, because it might be something that's useful for everyone else. Okay, so I want the three of us to talk a little bit about our experience with mods a little bit more. So I want to talk through, like, how much have you used the mods, and what do you think about various different categories of mods? So does one of you want to take that first?
Do you want to do it first?
Yeah, sure. I'll go first. Like, from ever since I started playing games, going back years ago to like Command and Conquer, Tiberium Sun, and that I was editing any files, back then. So like changing game files has always been something that I've been doing. Like World of Warcraft, I had my entire interface like so heavily modded, like so many different mods. Like it just looks like a completely different game. And then obviously once I found out that mods are a thing in World of Warships, like I started using them. Like I started recreationally using them, and then it's like you get more and more down the little
gateway
rabbit hole.
mods, the gateway mod. Yeah.
And
What
then
was your
before
gateway mod?
your screen's covered in like anime girls and ship girls everywhere.
So what was your gateway mod?
That's a very good. I think it was side panels probably.
Okay. Yeah.
Because the side panels with the HP bars, like all that kind of stuff. And then you see people with Navigator, and this is like back then you had the X marks the spot Minimap mod and all these kinds of things. I think I just like saw the Aslan's pack one day, and it's like, I need all of these things. It's like a kid in his candy store, he's just running in and is like, I want that, 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 and then like had a very heavily modified client for ages. And then actually nowadays, like I'm using a very reduced like mod pack. I was running vanilla for several months recently because it's been impacting my performance in the game. And now I'm just running the COTS pack because COTS is currently in season.
Funny, I've watched quite a few streamers go through that, and clan mates as well, but definitely streamers, where they'll start off with the vanilla client and then they'll discover that mods are a thing, and suddenly they'll install everything, and then they'll gradually kind of back off that. Because like Flambust has been saying for years, like, don't do mods, I don't do mods, I don't do mods, I don't do mods. And then like last year, as he had to install them for something, and then suddenly he's got all these mods installed. but now he's backed off again. But yeah, like Mr. G doesn't run mods. You don't run mods. I think it's pretty common not to mod your client. So what do you, Pencil, think about? So I've got 3 categories in the notes. So cosmetic mods, things which give you kind of available information, and then things which give you a definite advantage. So what do you think about those 3 different categories?
Do I think it's okay to use cosmetic mods? Yes. Do I think it's okay to use mods which show game information non-standardly? If this is specifically referring to things that I would have to memorize, as in like, torpedo ranges and that, I think that's fine because you could literally just like have a notepad, like a physical notepad next to your computer and write these things down. But then when it gets to, do you think it's okay to use mods which give the player an advantage over vanilla? I can't give a harder. Like I feel seedy thinking about it. It's like I would certainly run them myself, but I don't think it's okay. So it's like one of those things where it's like, well, okay. Yeah,
Okay.
that's where I stand on that.
So we'll get to Killerbin in a second. So the reason that I want the 3 of us to talk to these points is that we're about to have a big discussion about this, and maybe some of our opinions will change. Okay, Killerbin. What do you...
To no one's surprise, my first mods were cosmetic, but they were alternative historical camo schemes.
Okay, that doesn't surprise me at all.
So my first encounter with mods was all through the forums, and people would make like a forum thread of like historical camo skins, and it's where I started to learn the legal issue that some mods present.
Huh. Yeah.
Particularly regarding what I consider as a student of history, like perfectly reasonable camo schemes that include politically sensitive imagery. Case in point, the Imperial Japanese flag and swastikas on the decks of German ships. As a historian, that's completely reasonable to me because that's what they look like. But obviously, as an international company, Wargaming have to abide by a lot of rules for countries where you cannot have that imagery on display because of its negative connotations. And therefore, otherwise excellent pixel perfect camo mods would be taken down because they had controversial imagery. After that, it was sort of, and then I was pointed towards Aslan's, and I would say, a relatively lightly modded client, side panels for health, looking at the panels rather than having to look at the ship directly. I find is more useful from a competitive perspective as a caller. I just look at that without having to like move the camera around if I'm focused on something. But most of the mods I use are probably more geared towards a competitive sense with win timer, maybe the extended tech tree mods if I'm curious about upcoming content and stuff. But none of the mods where I personally feel that may potentially give you an advantage over a player not running mods. The often one that comes to mind is Navigator, particularly if you're playing ships with improved angles. But other than that, I don't really do that much heavy modding. I've basically passed 3 or 4 patches, download Aslan's, and just go click, click, click because it remembers all the mods I use, and I don't do anything more.
Yeah, it's very handy from that point of view, actually. And there is actually a way of, I'll put this into my tutorial, but there's actually a way of capturing different profiles, for want of a better word, of like if you've got like a tournament set and a normal playing set and whatever, you can actually have different sets that you can install very quickly. Okay, that's really interesting. I think my usage and feelings is probably pretty close to Painezor's. I started playing on a vanilla client before I realized that mods were possible, and then was introduced to Aslane through my old clan. Some of my old clanmates used to run very heavily modified clients. And I did the same thing. I was like, oh, okay, I'll just install one and see what happens, and then I'll ended up with all like the shell tracers and the like everything. And then gradually sort of backed off. And now I'm kind of in a position where none of my mods are cosmetic, I don't think, at least in battle. Yeah, no, I do have a couple of camera mods, but they're like mainly for the port. So it's mostly, for me, it's mostly sort of information overlay kind of things. Some of it related to being a streamer. So, for example, one of the ones I've been using recently is that one that means I can show my captain builds in the match, which means that when someone comes into chat and says, "Can you show your ship build?" I can do it right there and then, because usually I can remember what my upgrades are, and I can just mouse over the captain skills and they can see immediately what they are. So there's things that are for the audience, and then there are things that are for directly for me. And honestly, like in terms of those three categories of mods, I'm kind of on the fence. like Painter, I'm like, I use them, but I'm not entirely comfortable with the fact that they exist. So Navigator being, which is a really stupid name, but Navigator being probably the best example of one of those. So it shows you, like Killerbin just said, it shows you the angle from your keel to the keel of the target that you have selected. And so it's not directly to the armor plate that you're aiming at, but it's close enough. And if you're playing something like a Des Moines, for example, that's super valuable information, especially in competitive. And that's definitely going to give you an advantage over someone who doesn't have that installed, because visually judging angles is quite difficult. So the fact that it exists and I can use it, like I am using it, but I'm honestly not entirely sure how I feel about that. I know how I feel about other people using it against me, kind of thinking, oh, I don't really like that. But, I can't really stop you from using it because I use it myself. And it was the same with the Xbox, the Spot mod. I used to use that before it was integrated into the main game. Same feeling about that. This is it's a bit cheaty, which I guess is one of the reasons why they did it, because everyone who used mods was using it. And that was a significant percentage of the player base. So I'm honestly, about that kind of mod, I'm kind of conflicted. And there are some mods which I wish they would implement into the main game just to make sure that it's fair for everyone, because they're really useful mods and they should be in the main game anyway. And that's a topic that we're going to talk about a bit later when we get to the listeners' questions. Okay, so what I want to move on to is I've gone through the Aslane installer. Now, anyone who's ever used Aslane, I've never actually seen ModStation. I'd imagine ModStation is kind of similar, but just fewer things. Aslane has a list in it of all the mods that you can install, and there are, I don't know how many there are. There's like 300 different mods, something like that. And they're in this massive, great big long list. Some of them have options, some of them just a checkbox. So I've gone through all the different categories and I've tried to pull out some that will be interesting to talk about. Some of these we'll just gloss over very briefly. Some of them we're definitely going to have a more in-depth discussion about. And so this is going to be, most of this episode is going to be going through this list. After that, we'll be going to take a few questions from Discord. Okay, so let's just get straight into it. So the first category we have here is so ship contour things for the sidebars, and some of those just show the ship contours with funky colors or whatever, but some of them also have the ship stats, and we'll get into other mods later on that also have ship stats. So have you guys ever used these contour mods for the sidebars, or what do you think?
I cannot tell the difference between two ships from a picture of the contours at all. Like, not
That's
even
because
close.
you're blind.
No, you say that, but that's actually going to come into play with a couple of discussions later on I'm going to have, like, about accessibility with mods. But yeah. But the biggest thing that we're kind of glossing over in this section is the second half of it, the ship previews, and what a disgrace they are to the game. All of these warship waifus and Azure Lane and Cancor collection. It's absolutely disgusting. These things should be banned. Just get in there early with a hot take. All the weebs can stop listening now.
I thought you said, Painezor, that cosmetic mods are fine and that you love the anime mods. I thought that's what you said about 10 minutes ago.
I never said I love the anime mods. No, not even remotely. I specifically turned those off with the little, like, the in-game ones, the ones that you can turn off.
Mm-hmm.
We should have also mentioned, like, those at some point as well. The space cameras. Yeah.
You can totally, without even modding your client, you can actually turn that content off. And of course, I think a lot of people don't realize that if you install a cosmetic mod Other people obviously cannot see that content. It's just for you. And obviously, if you're a streamer, your audience, but that's not going to affect anyone else's game. So if you want to install the pineapple pizza mod for the FDR, go for it, but no one else is going to see it. So yeah, I have no problem whatsoever with cosmetic mods because they're just for you.
I do. When somebody decides to post a screenshot of their last battle, when all I can see
Well.
is like a load of like anime ladies lying over the tops of torpedoes and bombs and citadels. Yeah.
And I do occasionally go onto streams where someone has got a really heavily modded, cosmetically modded client with all the anime things and the mod, like the voice packs and anime skins and all this kind of stuff, and it literally makes me go and close the stream because I don't know, it's just not my cup of tea. But if you're into that, you go for it. It's fine by me.
Killerbin, when he's not streaming, like 6 days a week, he has all of these mods installed. The other one day when he's streaming,
Yeah, one day he'll forget to uninstall them, and we'll catch him.
Oh dear.
Okay, so related to the ship contour icons is one that we can actually probably get into a bit more, which is the side panels. So there's a few different ones like Batter Best, Hacker Base. So I think Batter Best version 1 is the one that you'll see in King of the Sea. That gives the health bars on the side for each of the enemy ships. And by the way, the enemy health bars are only updated when that ship is spotted. So don't rely on it completely because it's only valid for the last spotted health, not the current health. So I mean, I use these extensively when I'm casting. I think they're really handy for the audience because it lets the audience see at a glance what the health pools of the various ships are and get a much better idea for how the battle is going. But I don't like using sidebars when I'm playing myself. I just don't feel like I need that information. What about you guys?
Well, there's 2 parts to it here. Firstly, you've got the health bars itself, which when I used to run these a lot, there was a lot of times when I would say to myself, like, okay, how much health did that DD have when it was last spotted? Okay, how much health have I got? Okay, I can go fight that. Like, if I'm not paying attention to, like, if I'm busy, like, looking one way and there's a DD fight happening, like, behind me, and I'm not going to see the end result of the health point trade, that's a flat out advantage that I've got over what I would have had from not paying attention. So, very strong. There's also the second half of this, where a lot of these side panels have the additional information, which you have in your scoreboard, or like your whole tab thing.
Yep.
I don't know when you want to discuss this part now or later on.
Go for it. Yeah, it's fine. If we jump around a bit, it's fine.
Yeah. So a lot of these side panels also include information about things like ship's ranges, torpedo ranges, consumables. Does it have radar? Does it have hydro? Basically, like removing a massive part of the burden of knowledge from the player. Which, granted, if you're a very experienced player, plays less into it. So this is like a mod that would help out your newer players, and not so much help out your more experienced players. Like, this is something that would lower the skill floor.
Yes. I'd like to
rather than-
dip when we get to minimaps. I'd like to dip into that a bit more because I use obviously a minimap, which is what we both do use. Well, you used to use a minimap which is highly customizable. So I'd like to talk about why I use that and the advantages that it gives me. That would be kind of cool. Yeah, I think I'm with you. But I think a lot of this comes down to the fact that the game client doesn't necessarily do a very good job of giving you the information.
Yeah.
And it could do.
It could do. It's been proven that the game client can do, because in the most recent iteration of the April Fool's battle, key battles, what was it called? The most recent one, Big Hunt.
Mm-hmm.
When you were in a division with somebody, you could see the health bar on the side. So that information is accessible by the game. You know, they can easily make a UI for this. They just haven't, for whatever reasons. Instead, the side panels we have in game is just the contour icons, which does absolutely nothing for anybody. And I've never understood why.
This is it. Like, you look at the default sidebars, like,
why do they exist?
Why are they even a thing?
Do?
It doesn't tell you anything. I remember being a new player and looking at those and going, what is that actually for? What, am I missing a point here? Is it just, they're just completely useless? Unless you're the kind of person like Killerbin who can look at those and goes, oh yes, that's a Cheshire class, blah blah blah, and it's 1943 refit.
Doesn't even tell you that.
Well, no, I know, but just I don't know. I don't get why they exist. They could so easily just turn that into something
No,
useful.
absolutely. I agree that the standard one, which is just the white outline of the ship, is basically useless unless you happen to know through other sources that you know that's probably in Alaska and you know it's got 10K radar. So in the heat of the moment, you look at it and you don't have to press tab and then look at the team lists and stuff, and you can go from there.
But they could easily just make that say literally Alaska.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In text, and it's I
replacing
really...
the outlines with the names of the ship would be an improvement.
Which, of course, is what some of the mods actually do. They have
Yeah.
the outline, and then over the top of the outline, it'll say the name of the ship and the tier. And then some of them, again, will add to that the basic stats of the ship. Although you have to be careful with that. So, for example, the mods don't have access to the in-battle concealment. So the figure that it gives you is some modified version of the base with the camo on it or something. I don't know, but
I think it can tell. It can pick up certain things like which hull you're running. So that was a thing for like Oodaloy, which had different concealments depending on which hull it had. But also, I think it can pick up your modules? Question mark.
I think what it's
I think
using...
it goes off the rating, the number rating.
That's it. I think that's...
They've assigned a value to that rating, so it sees that your Shimakaze has a concealment rating of 98, and therefore it's 5.6.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it is, and I think that's how they do the torpedoes as well. Because it doesn't have access directly to the build of the ship, other than your ship. It only has access to the stuff that you can see as a player, because it's operating as a player essentially from a permissions point of view. So it can only get stuff. It can only get stuff that it can get from the API, or it can get from the in-game UI.
This is again like something that you could write down on a pen and paper if you really, really wanted to, and look up like on the fly mid battle.
Yeah.
Mm.
But that's going to take you a lot longer than just looking at the sidebar. So even though it is available information, is it giving an advantage over someone who doesn't have that? Yeah, of course it is. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, definitely. Especially when like the amount of times I've heard somebody on TeamSpeak say at the start of battle that Shimmer's running 20s, by the way, because it's like written on their sideboards. And
Yeah,
it's okay, that's valuable information.
Yeah, I do it all the time. Because a Shima running 20s. If you're a carrier, for example, I was playing quite a lot of carrier last night, and there were several Shimas that we came across that had 20s. They're genuinely dangerous to you, because if they're torping through the team, those torps could reach you. So it's something to be aware of.
There's no greater shame than dying at a 20-kilometer Shimmer top. So
no, that is true.
They'll run out. They'll run out.
They'll run out. They've got to run out. Surely they're going to stop.
They're spotted like 3 kilometers away from you as well.
It doesn't stop them though. Okay, let's move on to the next one. So this one is one that I use. This is things that give you information about your oh no, actually no, this is a different one. This is your team's hit points. So this is again one that you might see when people are casting tournaments. So at the top of the screen you can see the two teams' total hit point value. And then you might also get some mods that show you again the individual ship health bars, but they're at the top of the screen instead of the side. I mean, I don't think there's much to talk about with this. Have you guys ever run those outside of casting?
I run, well, you say outside of casting. I run them in battle because of the simple fact that like I'm too lazy to turn them off. But I don't think they give any sort of advantage.
Like, I think when you're watching a tournament or you're casting a tournament, I think they're quite handy, because then you can say things like, oh, well, the red team has got 150,000 total hit points left, whereas the green team has only got 50,000, and therefore the Reds have a massive hit points advantage.
Yeah, it's one of those things that like it doesn't actually provide any useful information, but it's a cool statistic to show. And like,
it's a talking point for casters, basically.
Yeah.
I don't know anyone who runs it regularly, like, because you might think, oh, well, a lot of the things that are run for casting tournaments are also used by the players. Like players might use the ship hit point bars because that's actually quite useful. But team health, no, I don't think so. All right, next topic is crosshairs.
Oh boy.
Oh boy. Oh
I
boy.
have never used a modded crosshair. I
Me
have never
neither.
changed the crosshair. I used the crosshair that the game says. Because I didn't know you could change them. So I learnt it.
I watched an iChase video in 2017, in February 2017. I set my crosshair to dynamic based on watching that iChase video and watching another one by Notza, and I have never touched it since.
I have changed my crosshair so many times. I think when I started playing the game, I think I was on standard. Then I changed it to dynamic at some point. Then I came back to the game, started using the standard, like after a year break, forgot that dynamic crosshair was a thing. Switched to dynamic crosshair, decided very recently, as in like the other day, that is like, you know what, this dynamic crosshair is probably doing me more harm than good. So I've now switched to that single green line, like
Mhm.
on the standard crosshairs, just because it's much clearer for me to be able to tell whether a ship's turning in or out because it blurs less for us. So yeah, that's all over the place. Like, and also apparently you're everywhere against nonogram.
That's the thing. So whenever you discuss crosshairs on a stream or in like in any kind of World of Warships community forum, it's a matter of seconds before someone says, "Oh, nomogram."
It's like that one picture of like the birds talking, and then there's just like that crow that just nonogram.
Yeah, but pretty much. I've seen people using it. I've seen people using it. I mean, there are quite a few different options for nomogram and variations of it, and it basically covers a lot of the same things that a lot of the other crosshair mods do in terms of being dynamic and being changing according to the speed of the ship that you're targeting, but except it's not because it can't do that. So it's sort of based on 30 knots or based on 20 knots or whatever it is. I think the in-game one is based on 20 knots. I think nomogram is 30. I can't remember, but it also has
nonogram
options.
has both, I think, 20 and 30. So one on top, one on the bottom.
And it also has diagonals. Some of the options will show you diagonals. That one's kind of interesting. So something I have considered installing, particularly when I first started playing and I was starting to sort of get into the game a bit more. I was like, I need to improve my aim. I did consider, but I didn't. I did consider installing a diagonals mod so that just to get a better idea of how to lead targets. I think
there is a standard crosshair with that.
Oh, okay, yeah.
There's a built-in one, but the problem is nobody like even knowing that you can change the crosshair in the game, like, is so hidden in the options for a new player that they will never discover this.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, but also, like, whenever I'm watching a stream and I see the spider web crosshair, it puts me off.
Yeah.
Like, it's just so much visual clutter. Sure, it might be useful to the player using it, but like, spectator-wise, horrible. Hate it.
I remember seeing, I was watching Strangers play once, and Strangers had even like the most possible simple crosshair you could find in the standard crosshairs, and then also had tracking turned off, so that and it's something I want to try myself. I assume the reason that Strangers was doing that was because if you have target tracking turned off, you can more easily see changes in speed, particularly at a distance, and particularly now that we have sort of fog and stuff in the game. Sometimes it's very difficult to tell what something is doing in terms of speed. Whereas if your crosshair is never moving unless you move your mouse, you can tell pretty easily whether it's slowing down or speeding up. So interesting. Nothing to do with mods, but I thought that's quite an interesting thing.
I didn't think anyone ever turned that off.
I really want to try it because
if anyone was going to do it and do it well, it would have been Strangers.
Yeah,
absolutely, yeah. Okay, so I think none of us are really big fans of modding crosshairs, but it's a thing.
At some point, I'm gonna try it. I just haven't got around to it because obviously
to it. I just never felt the need to do it.
Yeah, I don't think crosshairs, like any of the available crosshairs, really give you a massive advantage. It's just a personal preference thing.
Well, this is the thing, is like, if we take a step back from World of Warships for a second and we talk about something like Counter-Strike, like, people will spend hours and hours fine-tuning exactly how they want their crosshair to look on screen. Like, you know, like stuff like the reflex time, or how like rapidly, how small it is, what color it is, what RGB it is on, like, you know, how fast it releases the tightening on, like, it's so like so personal preference, but like it does actually give a competitive advantage because it's exactly the way they want it because of the way their needs are. It's so weird. I don't think World of Warships is quite as advanced as that.
No, but you're likely going to perform better with something that you're comfortable with. You're
Honestly,
comfortable with a crosshair,
saying,
then you'll do better with it.
like I was saying yesterday on stream, I think I've learned to aim just visually based on like literally where the cross is on the crosshair and the ship, and just the relationship between those two things. And I don't, as long as I've got some kind of cross in the middle of the screen, I think I will be just fine.
Oh, I still can't aim.
Well,
For me, it's more
that's
a
the point.
case
Like, no crosshair is going to help your aim. I don't think.
No.
And actually, I think if you're a new player who ends up relying too much on the information that a crosshair is showing you, I think it could actually limit you to a certain extent.
Unless we end up with one of these rumored illegal mods that calculates lead for you.
Okay.
Like I remember being told that there were illegal crosshairs that would basically take the aim assist and go, you need to give this lead for this ship moving at this speed.
Well, that's beyond the realms of crosshairs, though. That's
It's still incorporated into the crosshair system.
That's as close to an aim hack that this game can get, really.
But even then, like, we should probably discuss this. It's like, it doesn't matter if you know exactly where this ship is going to be if it maintains its current course and speed in 15 seconds. That doesn't matter because they're going to be actively maneuvering to dodge.
Are they, though?
In a competitive environment,
I can confirm most players don't.
If we're talking about in a competitive environment, specifically, like, you know, what spurred this on was the idea of like a mod-free King of the Sea or something like that. That was the initial idea of that. Like, we ended up talking about this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
That caliber of player probably not going to be sailing in a straight line. I say probably not. That's the caveat. Probably not. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw somebody getting dev struck because they're still in a straight line in King of the Sea. I think we probably have seen it. That's not the point.
I think though,
static cruiser and something like that.
It's safe to say that this game does not have an equivalent of the kind of thing that you might find in a first-person shooter, where obviously bullet travel time is almost instantaneous, or is instantaneous, and you can have bots that just do headshot. That's just not possible because of the shelf life time.
There was that thing that kind of got around a little bit the other month where you just shoot into the sky.
Okay, well but that's not a mod. That's just
that's base game, but still. That's so stupid.
I wouldn't be surprised if some of the more questionable aim assist mods were working off that mechanic.
Potentially.
Probably, yeah.
Potentially. Okay, so one that I use, and when I say use, I have it installed. The number of matches that I actually use it in is pretty low, and that's Navigator. We mentioned it briefly earlier. And this is the one that shows in the HUD. So I have the mini version installed, which just makes it look like a part of the textual middle of your crosshairs. And it shows you the angle from your keel to the keel of the ship that you have selected. I think this is one of those ones that I feel kind of uncomfortable about. So it basically, like, if you know your pen angles, if you know the pen angles of the ship that you are shooting with, this is a really, really powerful mod because it means that you can hold your shot if a ship is kind of turning really slowly and giving you slightly more angle, or they're coming towards you and they're giving you more of an angle. You can hold your shot until you're pretty sure that the armor plating that you're aiming at, which is usually not quite the same angle as the keel, has given you enough angle that you're probably, you're inside that may bounce angle or you're inside the won't bounce angle. And if you're in something like a Stalingrad or a Des Moines or something like that that has those improved pen angles, it's really, really quite powerful. So I honestly, there's even a bloody space for it. In the actual official vanilla crosshair, the bottom left-hand corner of there's 3 bits of text information. You've got your current spotting, you've got the range to the point that you're aiming at, and the flight time. And there's a gap. There's actually a gap for it. They could easily put this into the client. And this is one of the ones that I wish they would include.
See, whenever I've used Navigator, I've always used the bigger version. But it's less for like point blank Des Moines auto bounce angles, more for long range, which way is this ship turning? Because it's much easier to visualize the direction of a ship's turn. Are they turning in or out? What is this like? What is the acceleration of the turn? If you're looking at Navigator, then it is by trying to like judge it by either the minimap, which requires you moving your entire head and being like, "Where is he on the map?" Okay, and by that point, you've already missed the chance to take a shot.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It always surprises me when you look at the angle visually in the 3D world, and then you're like, is that enough? And then you look at the minimap, and like the angle on the minimap is completely different to what you think it is. And that navigator, the big navigator version, does really help with that. But then I realized, okay, well, it's just giving you the same information as the little number is, so you might as well just have the little number. It depends how you think, I suppose.
If you choose, I like the little number is fine if you're on about your point blank shots, your Des Moines auto bounce angles, like bow tanking. I'm on about specifically like a broadsiding cruiser at 17 kilometers, but maybe not 17, but 15. And you're on a battleship and you're trying to judge which way they're turning. It's a lot easier to judge the turn and aim up or down to lead the turn with Navigator, because you can see exactly when he's about to hit the crux of his turn and time your shot for it.
I've just thought, I use something you don't now. So I have on my minimap, I have the lead lines enabled. So I can tell really easily when an enemy ship starts to turn, because I can see its white lead line starting to move. Which is probably why I don't find the big navigator useful, because I can get that information from the minimap.
Oh.
Yeah, that might be it.
Ben?
I've never used Navigator at all. I've never used it.
Huh.
How? Any reason why? Just can't be bothered?
Partially because I don't like the idea of it.
Mm-hmm.
But then, I guess, as you say, there's a space in the vanilla system to have it in place, and if they were to put it in, I would use it. But I'm also predominantly play classes that don't. The angle the ship is relative to isn't always that important.
What do you think about if they added that into the game? Would you be comfortable with that?
If everyone's got access to it, then it's kind of irrelevant if I'm comfortable with it or not, because everyone can use it and it's a fair thing. The developers have deemed it fair.
I mean, you could always do the same thing with putting a protractor on your minimap if you really wanted to.
I mean, yeah, of course. And then you see those pictures of people who play Overwatch and Counter-Strike where they've taped a magnifying glass to cover their crosshair.
Oh, I've seen worse than that. Like in Grand Theft Auto role playing, right? There was a thing where people would, in a lot of other games actually, people would take a Sharpie or a bit of blue tack and put it in the middle of their screen because there was no in-game crosshair, because you're not supposed to have one.
I think that's pretty common. My monitor has a feature that you can turn on where it has its own crosshair, and you can just put a crosshair in the middle of the screen.
It's so dumb. So dumb. No.
Well, okay. All right, let's move on to the next category. The next category is I've called it visual effect removers. So this is mods which do things like remove the frame from around the binocular view, remove the boost animation for the camera with planes boosting, removing the fire surround, or the flooding surround, or probably more importantly, removing things like smoke effects, fog effects, fire effects, changing the effects back to old ones that used to be in the game, things like that. Have either of you ever used those things?
Water splashers, specifically water splashers, yes. Massive help, especially when you're shooting the destroyers. Because if you're ever in a DD knife fight and like you try to judge the angle of the next salvo, if you don't have navigator running, you just kind of like, and there's like a massive water splash because like a conqueror shoots, and you can't see where the ship is turning to lead it with your next salvo. And when you're meant to be trying to put out as many salvos as possible, because DD knife fights, kind of gets a bit difficult. This water splash remover probably increases your DPM, just like your effective DPM, by no, 20%, just because you can see where he is without having to wait for other shots to dissipate around it. It's
I think
actually very firm advantage.
I think there have been 3 eras for that. I think there was before, so like there's the current era of splash animation, which we've just had, delivered. There was the period before that, and then there was the period before that. So initially, when I started playing the game, splashes were pretty see-through. They weren't very big. They didn't really obscure anything. So it wasn't really a problem. Then we went to the era of massive splashes that caused those like walls of white water to spring up, and you just can't see anything until it dies down. Back then, I used to install the old splash mod when I was doing clan battles for that exact reason, so that you can spot the destroyers as they wiggle away behind all the shells. But now with the new animations and the sort of particle-based effects and stuff like that, I think they've struck a pretty good medium between the visual effect and visibility. And actually, I kind of like the idea that there are like graphical elements that might actually make it harder for you to aim. I like the idea of fog, although sometimes it can be a bit annoying, but I quite like the idea of fog. And I do actually quite like the idea that if there's splashes all around a ship, it should be more difficult to shoot at it.
Well, this is a thing as well, though. It kind of like, I mean, I remove the fog entirely. I just don't like the effect. It just annoys me. Like it just annoys me. I remove it. And there's a lot of people who will go as far as to not only remove the fog effect, they will turn their graphics down to such a low quality that it looks like a completely different game simply because things obscure their line of vision. People will turn the foliage settings, foliage settings all the way down because trees get in the way of them aiming over islands. Like,
Yeah, I'm very much in the camp of one of the reasons that I'm playing a game is because I like looking at the pretty game. And there's no way that I'm going to turn down the graphic settings just to get a very slight advantage. I can't stand the game without the fog turned on. It looks horrible. So yeah, there's no way I'll do that unless it was something like a tournament or clan battles where
I was about to say it.
I do turn it off.
That's why we're casting cuts and not playing. Killerbin, on the other hand.
I will stand here and admit that I have never degraded the quality of a game's visuals to gain a competitive advantage.
Good luck in cuts, by the way.
Yes.
I was about to say, and that's why Throw isn't winning cuts.
But
yeah,
no, I do remember the high point of the splashes where, again, in competitive, destroyer gets spotted, everyone opens fire, and then you have to wait more than you reload because there's like 30 splashes that have appeared around this one destroyer. And from in a match perspective, it was frustrating. From this game does like to claim its historicalness at times, it's a valid thing. Ships did escape damage because they could hide, they would chase splashes and use them to obscure enemy ships shooting at them. So I'm okay with it. Just because, even though it's one of those situations where I like using it, I don't like it being used against me. But that makes you a hypocrite, so I just deal with it.
I think this is one of the mods that I would prefer was base game. I would prefer that the splash effects were subtler and not obscuring. Because
do you not think that the new graphic animations are better?
better, yes, still obscuring though. But this is the thing as well, is like even with the even if the water splash mod was removed, you would still have the advantage if you had big navigator, for example, because you would know what angle the ship is turning at, even if it's been obscured, so you'd still be able to lead it.
Yeah, sure.
Which falls back at the problems of navigator itself, and I mean, it's like,
well, effectively, it gives you not quite X-ray vision, but it certainly allows you to put your guns in the right place.
Yeah, I mean, theoretically, you could just use the minimap anyway, but
well, there is that.
I've never thought to myself, oh, there's a destroyer there, I should lead it with the minimap. Probably would help, but no, I use my eyes to shoot at destroyers. I don't use the minimap.
Okay.
What do I use the Minimap for? Oh yeah, lobbing. That's it. Sorry.
There's one that I actually I've just realized I haven't used for a while actually, but when the carrier rework first hit, one of the things that really caused me problems was when you boost with planes, it changes the field of view. So it effectively changes the focal length of the camera. And so you get that weird kind of effect that they usually overuse in cheap movies sometimes, where the middle zooms in and the outside zooms out. And then when you release the button, it goes the other way. That used to
Radial
make me
blur.
feel really sick. So there's a mod that removes that effect, which I've just gotten used to it. So I haven't used it recently, but I used to quite like that. So, and that's nothing to do with like game advantage or anything. It's just a personal preference thing. I just didn't like the boost effect. Yeah, and I suppose the same thing with the fire surround. I actually used to mod that. I used to remove the fire frame and the flooding frame because I just found it really annoying.
I use the suppressed version that's available in the default options instead of like the really loud, like actual
Yeah.
fire graphics all over. Like,
Oh, is that what that does?
Yeah, it changes it from like physical
Oh.
fire effects to a little orange blur or a little blue blur at the edges of your screen.
I didn't know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have to try that. I thought that what that did was change the in-game 3D animation model thing.
No. It changes the
Interesting.
stupid looking 2D 1996
Right.
style fire GIF.
Yeah, I've never actually unchecked that or checked it. But and honestly, when I'm playing the game myself, I don't even notice that animation anymore.
I don't either.
But when I'm watching people's streams, it still really annoys me.
Yeah.
Okay. The next one's kind of interesting. So there's a mod you can get now, which actually there's two mods. One gives you that new icon that tells you where your CV is and what state it's in, that flies around your reticule. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know.
There's a mod that makes that a little bit less annoying, which is cool. And then there's another one which is really interesting, which allows you to see the engine and rudder state of your hull while you're flying your planes. It doesn't allow you to control the ship, it just allows you to see what it's doing. That's cool. I quite like that.
Well, Wargaming have specifically stated that they think that players are too stupid to handle all that kind of stuff when they're playing carriers, so I don't think they need this information.
Meanwhile, the destroyer player in the middle of the B cap is having to track radar, hydro, planes, where the other two destroyers are that are in the other side of the cap, dodge torpedoes and shells, and manage smoke spotting. Yeah.
And he's also going to have to kill the submarine.
Yeah. No, I kind of like this one because obviously although it's been a lot better recently, the autopilot for the carriers is obviously a bit unreliable sometimes, and especially if you're operating somewhere like near a map border, being able to see if your carrier has like shoved it in reverse when it shouldn't be at a glance is quite handy.
Surely all that mod does is tell you just how bad the autopilot is.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, it can get you out of trouble. It's just handy to see what it's doing.
Doesn't the default UI show you that you're reversing when you're in plane view?
When you're playing a carrier, you cannot see any information to do with your hull whatsoever.
Ah.
Other than your hull health. But in terms of your rudder setting and your engine, no, you can't see that.
That would be obviously that would be too much information for a carrier player to handle. Clearly,
the UI just hides it when you're playing when you're in the planes, and then it shows it again when you go back to the hull. And so all the mod does is just unhides it. Kind of cool. I can see how it would why Wargaming wouldn't like it, because players might think that they can control the ship. But as long as you know that you can't do that, it's fine. It's kind of useful information. So I'd imagine there are a few CV players who actually do use that. Okay, we've got camera mods next.
Quickly, one more thing from that selection. There was the show max speed target a crosshair. Basically, like where you're, I think it's where you're the bottom right on your crosshair. It puts the maximum speed of the thing that you're aiming at there,
which you could use in conjunction with a dynamic crosshair.
Yes, to be able to be the max speed of this thing is 44 knots. I'm currently using a 40 knot lead. I mean, it's a mental aimbot, but this could also be like people, like a lot of people memorize ship maximum speeds. This is like again one of those things. It's like burden of knowledge,
Yeah.
reduction of the burden of knowledge. Like how fast does a fantastic go? Apparently, it goes that fast. Whoa. Okay.
Yeah, it's just a shortcut to having to remember things. Because yeah, you could totally have a little notebook that you note down all the various speeds of things, and like when you play a tier 7 match, you just flip to the tier 7 page, so that you can look that stuff up.
So why can't I have a thing that tells me what I overmatch?
Well, yeah. I mean, yeah. I'm honestly, I guess it's not possible from the information that's available during a match, but I'm kind of surprised that no one has tried to make a mod that does that. Like, because it knows what ship you are in, so it knows what caliber guns you are shooting. Does the UI, is it possible for a mod to grab from the UI what ship you're aiming at? I guess it can if it can do the speed.
Well, equally, it can grab the player's clan, and then it can grab an arbitrary file for the player's clan tag to get the picture of it.
What I'm just wondering is whether you could have a mod that says, like
You
the,
overmatch this.
like the traffic light mod that just says yes you do or no you do not overmatch this person's bow. I mean, obviously you can't do it for every single armor plate, but you could definitely do it for like the bow or the stern. I'm kind of surprised that isn't a thing, to be honest. Anyway, okay. So camera mods. This basically falls into two categories: port and battle. I use an import mod, which is fantastic, called Port Zoom Out. But ironically, the reason that I use it is because it allows you to zoom in, not out. Because it allows you to get about 2 or 3 clicks closer with your zoom than the default port actually allows you to do. And the newer models in the game at that distance are actually still really, really good. The detail on them is amazing now. So if you like looking around the models in the game, I highly, highly recommend that you install Port Zoom Out, because you can like look through the little windows in the bridge and see all the controls, and you can read the plaques on some of the ships and
see that it still says Roma.
And see that it still says Roma. But no, you could, like on the British ships, for example, you can see, they have the little plaque that has the dates and the battles on them, and you can actually read them, which is really, really cool. When a new ship comes out, I always love looking around the model. Again, it doesn't give you any kind of advantage. It's just interesting to see.
There is one port camera mod that does give me an advantage, and it's one that I do myself. It's by opening up a config file, changing dock inactivity timeout from 45 seconds or whatever the hell it is to like 9999999 seconds. And that way, whenever I position a ship in the port to put googly eyes all over it, it doesn't snap back to the default rotation. Clearly gives me a competitive advantage. Clearly
Massive
should be
competitive
banned.
advantage over other streamers. Yeah, absolutely. I actually figured out a way of controlling the camera using my Xbox controller. And I've used that in a couple of ship reviews that I've done in the last few months. And so instead of like you as smoothly as you try and rotate the camera around the ship with the mouse, you can never quite get it completely smoothly. Because at some point, your hand's gonna like wobble, or you have to stop and lift up the mouse or whatever. And yeah, I figured out a way of doing it so that you can just use the joystick on the Xbox controller, but that's nothing to do with mods. That's just an external application. So yeah, that's doable.
What application would that be? Stats people want to know.
Oh, I have no idea.
Probably Joy.
It was basically, there were quite a few. I just used the first one that I found. Basically, there are accessibility applications that allow you to use a joypad to control your mouse. So this is designed for people who maybe don't, like maybe people with arthritis, or who have reduced mobility in their fingers. You use a controller to control your mouse. And so I just used one of those, and sure enough, obviously the game doesn't know that you're not using a mouse. Windows reads the joypad input as a mouse input, and you can very, very smoothly then hold tracking speed. So it's just like scanning your mouse perfectly smoothly across the table at the same speed. And that works really, really well. if you ever need to create smooth footage. And I understand that's actually how Wargaming makes some of their panning shots.
Oh, please don't remind me of Verizon, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so there's port camera mods, and then there's in battle camera mods. So I use Zeiss Incline, and some people also use the point of like the field of view, not point of view, the field of view mods, Snackman particularly. So I honestly couldn't tell you what Incline does. I just know I don't like it when it's not installed.
I can tell you exactly what it does. When you're in a drive-by, if you don't have it installed, your aim gets skewed because you'll try to move the mouse down to the bottom of the broadside, but your turret depression won't let you. And then instead of like your guns tracking to where
Mhm.
you're trying to aim the mouse, they'll be tracking to where the last valid position was. But with Zeiss Incline, they'll track much better, and you can aim like in the general direction of the citadel in a drive-by. Like Zeiss Incline makes drive-bys easier. That's the
it
I
easiest way to
didn't
put it.
know that, and I may now have to go install
Yes.
that.
It doesn't improve your depression, obviously, but it definitely makes a difference. I couldn't have explained it, but yes, no, that sounds like a good description. Yeah. I think if you're a battleship player or a heavy cruiser player, absolutely, it's kind of vital. Yeah. The other one which I used to use myself very, very briefly, just as an experiment, is field of view. So you can actually take the default camera field of view and you can make it wider so that you can see further to the left and right. Basically by sort of zooming out. What it's actually doing is it's reducing the focal length of the virtual camera. But it's just it's horrible. I was watching Snackman streaming the other day, and he uses it, and it like you're looking at the game and you're thinking, this map looks familiar because that's the monastery, but that map isn't that map. And then you realize that they're using the field of view mod, and it makes the distances all look really wrong. Like distances close to the ship look really huge, and distances further away look really, really small. I guess it's just what you're used to, but I cannot stand those field of view mods.
A lot of the competitive players have, like, there was a discussion in the King of the Sea Discord yesterday. I think it was like Stewie, and I was like, I can't remember the last time I hadn't used the field of view mods, because apparently it makes dodging easier when you're like in a light cruiser or something. But
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, good. I suppose if you're scanning the horizon for shells coming, it
when
would
there's
make
less
it really-
horizon to scan, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That does make a lot of sense actually. Yeah, no, I don't like it, and I don't like it when streamers have it either. But if as a player you find it helps you, then go for it.
Equally though, like at the same time, you see these people with the ultra wide monitors, and you see their streams, and it's like you've got the bars at the bottom, the top and the bottom, and it's like this is really hard to look at. It's like you got your ultra wide monitor, and just like, okay, you can see further left and right, but this is really hideous to look at. No, thank you.
Yeah,
It does improve the play though.
Yeah, it probably does. Probably does.
It also makes leading gunboats a lot easier. It's like because you simply have more frame of reference, and you can like pan further.
Yeah, you can turn your camera quicker as well. Okay. The next category I've got here is OTM, so over target markers. These could be cosmetic, so they could be like changing the font that the ship name is displayed in. It could be changing the color, so some of them like change it from white to the team color, so red or green. And then there's also API information that can be put in there, like what is the current ship's travel direction, and you can even get ones that show like a ranked win rate or PR or things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that in a bit.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So I guess first of all, like we've said many times, like the cosmetic adjustments, I think we're all totally fine with. So if you want to change the font to Comic Sans or whatever, just you go for it. Don't do it while you're streaming, but go for it. Traffic lights is an interesting one.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
So
Shamelessly, I have used this one, but mostly that's because I have so much trouble reading the smokestacks because it blurs so much for me. I cannot read the smokestacks. I don't know if other people can read them like better when it's like reversing and going forward, but I struggle with it so much. And the traffic light just like, oh yeah, it's going forward. Okay, and your hit rate goes up so much simply because you know which way it's going. Which kind of screws over the engine juking destroyer, which I do a lot. I do the like WWSSS, WWSSS when I'm spotted to just try and like dodge a few salvos. If you're running that mod, you know exactly how I'm dodging. Like because it flashes red and green, and it flashes the acceleration basically. Like the faster it's flashing, I think it's like when it goes up a notch to speed. It's really hard to describe it.
So I've always assumed because that the mod does not have access to the current throttle setting of the enemy ship. It can't. So I've always assumed that what it is based off of in terms of whether it's showing you forward, backward, or neutral is one of the animations. I've always assumed that it was the smokestack animation. It might not be. It might be like the bow wave animation or something like that. But as far as I know, what it's showing you is the actual physical movement of the ship. So if a player is reversing and they suddenly shove it in full ahead, you're not going to see that traffic light change until they actually stop and go forwards.
No, I think how's the best way to describe this?
I haven't used it for years though.
Okay, if you assume that you've got a segment of space, and as it ticks through each segment of space, you're going to be ticking through the segments less often, and it's going to like go from solid red to red, gray, red, gray, red, gray, red, gray, and then like you know what I mean. So you can tell as it's
Interesting.
De-reversing is the word that people use these days.
I wonder how.
Look, Baz keeps saying de-reversing. And you know what I mean when I say de-reversing.
Yeah,
I mean.
but it makes me wonder how they actually accomplish that. Like, what is it in the UI that they're latching onto?
XY position on the minimap, probably.
Possibly, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I always warn people to just be aware that it's not necessarily showing you what you think it's showing you.
It's a very powerful mod, though.
It is. That's true. Especially like if a ship is behind an island, for example. So I don't use traffic lights. I used to, but I haven't used them for many years, like at least 3 or 4 years, probably 4 years. And yeah, I'm relying on the in-game information. So I'm relying on mainly it's watching the ship in relation to land or a marker buoy or something. So like looking at where the bow is in relation to a rock or things like that. To a lesser extent, I'm looking at the bow wave animation or the smokestack animation, which is a lot more difficult. And it's why I'm so terrible at aiming in the stormy conditions. Is because my instinct is to find some kind of fixed reference point. And this is why I think that Stranger's technique of turning off tracking might actually work really well for me.
Or turning off the fog.
Yeah, I know, but I don't want to do that. Although I do, if I'm on Islands of Ice and it's the fixed storm,
yep,
I quite often I will turn off the fog just for that one match.
Apparently, that makes I think Clyde particularly has issues with that.
Yes,
like it just makes him ill.
Yeah, he regularly rants in the CC Discord.
Yeah.
I think every time he has the road or the fixed storm on Islands of Ice, he goes into the CC Discord and goes, "Rrr." Yeah. Fair enough.
It's only ever an epicenter mode too.
Yeah, it is. Killerbin, have you ever used the traffic light? I don't think you have.
Nope.
Does that
Any opinion on it?
What was that, sorry, Painezor?
Any opinion on it?
Yeah, does it appeal to you?
I put it under the same category as Navigator.
How do you, when you're trying to judge what a ship is doing in terms of speed, what are you looking at?
Smokestack, bow wave, and that basically.
I mean, you can always do the same thing if you're in a torpedo cruiser. Like you can always press 3 and have a look and judge the acceleration that way. Like that's always a thing you can do. To like judge how far forward or backwards. Like you can see the torpedo lead. I wonder if it's based on that.
The only ships I've ever had issue giving lead on are French destroyers. But then I play predominantly ships with lower shell velocity.
Well, we'll take an
And I have
example
I don't
from.
have difficulty judging their speed because they are so fast.
We'll take your moment of fame when you
That was a
destroyed.
complete fluke, and that's never happening again. And I'm really annoyed about
I'm
it.
not
It's
on
never
about
going to
that
happen
one.
again.
Calm your tits. I'm on about King of the Sea 11, Axis versus Throw.
Oh,
Not
the
in the waters.
Mino up the stern.
Yes, when you were screaming at your teammates, is he going backwards or forward? If you didn't have a teammate respond, you could have had the traffic light mod telling you that information.
Yes.
Would that have given you a competitive advantage? Certainly.
Probably, yes.
Yeah. So, yeah. It's.
Yeah, it's definitely. I think you need to consider it in context, but it definitely gives you useful information. Yeah. Yeah, I just the main honestly the main reason why I stopped using it was because I didn't like the way it looked.
I mean, there's like 3 different versions of it these days, like different colored things, one with little triangles. But yeah, I like the mod, and I will continue to run it if I do run a modded client. But like actually installing a modded client is too much effort for me these days. Like it's just I get FPS lag, and I don't know what causes it, so I just take everything out. I can't be bothered to sit and
I'm
diagnose what it is.
fascinated by why you get such performance issues because your rig should not have them.
Yeah, well, don't know what it is, but something causes like FPS stutters. Like it was brutal for a while. Like right after the German CV launch, like I was getting brutal FPS tanks, and I haven't really changed anything about my system since then, apart from uninstalling the mods, and I've been relatively okay. So God knows.
I think people just take a little aside. I think people blame a lot of client instability on wargaming when actually it's their mods.
Yeah, like you see it all the time. You see like people's like, "Oh, this client is terrible," blah, 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 and then you like they'll post a screenshot of the bug that they're having, and you'll just see like ship girls here, and then there's like
I don't understand why my client keeps crashing.
They've got win rates all over the ships at the bottom. They've got like so many different custom filters. They've got like a custom port with like lewd anime women in the background, all that kind of stuff. It's like, oh, I wonder why your client's crashing.
If you are listening to this and that sounds very familiar to you and you are experiencing performance issues, what I would suggest that you do, you don't have to uninstall your mods. What I suggest that you do is you go into the Wargaming launcher, assuming that's how you launch the game, and you press next to the battle or next to the play button, the big orange play button, there's a little down arrow. If you press that, one of the options that comes up is safe mode. And that actually temporarily disables the mods just for that one load. Play like that for a few days. Force yourself to live without your mods for a couple of days. And just see if the game stability improves. I think you'll be quite surprised.
I really thought what you're about to say there was like, if that sounds like you don't have to uninstall your mods. I thought you were about to say just stop being a weeb. Like...
Well, that as well. I mean, yeah.
I found out Jingles is secretly a weeb today.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh dear.
To their own. Okay. The next little category, probably nothing to talk about here, is cosmetic adjustments.
No.
What?
We
Oh no, we skipped. Yeah, we skipped one. Yeah, totally. Yeah, go on.
XVM for World of Warships.
Yeah.
The battle stats of the players over the ship names and the ship health bars. That has got to be the single worst mod in the game. Should be absolutely yeeted from existence. Oh god, no, get rid of it.
Just to be clear what Painezor was talking about. So there is a mod that you can install. So we're not talking about an external application here. We're talking about something that is actually in the game client itself, where it's a mod you can install, and there are a few different versions, but you can have, for example, that player's random battles win rate. You can have that player's ranked win rate. I think there's one that shows you PR or battle rating or one of those kind of systems scores. There's a few different ones. There's one that shows you their ranked position, which you can get from the leaderboard, but shows you their silver 3 stars or whatever. And yeah, it caused a massive issue in tanks XVM. and yeah, this is essentially XVM for ships. Why are you saying that's a problem?
Simply breeds toxicity. I have enough people in my. I was sat playing Battle today, and like somebody on my team, like this is like a TF. It was like a TF 7-5 battle. I was doing test ships, doesn't really matter, but like I saw somebody in my team start raging at quote unquote the 42% shitter, and like it's just like it, it's who does that benefit? Who does you sitting in team chat screaming about the 42% shitter? Who does that benefit? Does it benefit you? Does it make you look like a better player by insulting them? Does it benefit, like, is it going to make the rest of us think that you must be a really good player if you insult the 42% player? Does it make the 42% player feel like a better player because, like, you're insulting him? No, none of those things are true. What it does, it makes you look like an asshole. And it makes the entire team, like, end up having an argument, and everybody's game ends up worse off for it. Like, what? It's you have a very different view on this.
No, I don't think I do. So I agree with you that players calling out other players before they've done anything in the match, like literally, like the match starts and they're already like, and you see it sometimes, like they're in chat, saying, "Oh my god, our destroyer is like 38%. We've lost or whatever," and comments that are directly aimed at that player. That's essentially bullying. It's horrible for that player. They just want to play the game, and you've got to consider that the player population is a bell curve for almost every statistic you want to look at, and particularly win rate. And for every player who is a 60%er, there is a player. Okay, not exactly, but for every player there is a 60%er. There is a player who is the equivalent 40%er. For every 65%er, there's a 35%er, and so on and so on and so on. And so approximately half of the player base are below average, depending on what version of average you're using. And you've got to allow for the fact that some players are below average, and that literally has to be the case, that some, like, half of the player base is going to be worse than the other half. And so even if everyone suddenly overnight, you click your fingers, or you go on you send all the players in the world on some mandatory training course that suddenly makes them really good players, still going to have people with 30% win rates and 35% win rates, because someone has to be at that end of the scale, even if they are now some kind of expert, because there will still be people who are even more expert than they are. Does that mean, like, if everyone is like super, super, super good now, does that still mean that the really, really super good people are still going to insult the people who are not quite so good?
But it's never.
It's often not the best players doing the
insulting. Yeah, it's Turbo
totally.
Dunning-Kruger.
It's the, like, 49 to 54 bracket. When I have used XVM, and I have looked at this, usually people in that bracket targeting the people beneath them, because you presume that they've had someone better than them berate them, and they can't berate them back, so they go after someone that they can berate because it makes them feel better.
Bullies are usually people who have been bullied. I totally agree with you, Painter. It creates this never-ending cycle of toxicity. So, one of those kind of players calls out someone, "Oh my god, you've got a 40% win rate." It might be in that ship, even. It might not necessarily be their account win rate. I've got ships that I'm on like 38% on.
Oh yeah, my Venezia is like still sub 50.
Despite the fact that that's nothing approaching my my account win rate. And like, my account win rate isn't none of our account win rates are representative of our actual performance, because the API overall win rate includes divisions, of course. And so if you go and look at our, like, just top level win rates, all three of us appear massively better than we actually are.
Absolutely.
Because we play in divisions with good people, and that multiplies. And so you can't take that figure. And the same thing's true of negative. I think of less than 50 as negative. So like below average win rates also multiply in divisions. A bad division or a division made up of bad players is going to be even worse than the individual players themselves. And so if they're from a casual clan where it's a bunch of, let's say, 45%ers playing together, having a good time, their 3-div win rate is probably going to be pretty low. But they're there and they're having a good time and whatever. And then someone comes along and is like, oh my god, 40%. Blah. It's like, just, it's a game. Why?
Oh, yeah.
Why you have to be mad? I mean, it's
basically, yeah. And it's like how we've all been in the position where we have done something in a match that has irked one of these sorts of players whose only response is to look up your stats and try and belittle you for it. And
do you remember that one on my stream the other day where someone looked
me? Oh my god, I can't believe you're so.
Do you remember that?
Then
do you remember that one on my stream?
And they go, they've looked up our stats and shown that we're better than them, and they've gone quiet.
I mean, that happened to me on stream a couple of weeks ago, where it was obvious that someone had looked me up and they're like, "Oh, okay." Yeah. So there is. So I mostly agree with you, Painezor, but there is one interesting thing that I find. Usually, the reason that I run Matchmaking Monitor when I'm not streaming, because obviously I'm not allowed to do that when I'm streaming. Part of the CC rules, we're not allowed to engage in any kind of stat shaming. Fair enough. But when I'm off stream, I do like to have Matchmaking Monitor open purely because sociologically, I find it fascinating. It's the World of Warships equivalent of people watching, like sitting in a cafe window and just watching the world go by. It's that kind of thing. I find the link between player stats and behavior absolutely fascinating. The fact that you can pretty much predict 9 times out of 10 when a cruiser goes behind a rock, what's going to happen? Are they going to come out the other side, or are they going to make some kind of evasive turn behind the rock? Can be really well predicted just by looking at that player's stats. And as a battleship player in that case, it's going to help you out because you know where to aim. And I just find that fascinating. And the reason I ended up with my nickname, my player name, is because that's what I used to do in my old clan in clan battles. I used to say who would be the most valuable targets, basically. So there's that use of it as well in competitive.
There's also the how much can I rely on this guy behind me? Like if you spawn in a destroyer, like there's a Des Moines behind you. You see he's a 70%, 150,000 average. That's 70% run rate. You could probably donate him a smoke. He's probably going to carry the game for you. If he's, a 30%er and like he's got 16,000 average damage, he's probably not worth the smoke screen. But at the same time, I think my problem is less with the mod itself, and I think it's with the player base.
It's one of those like guns don't kill people, people kill people things.
Yeah.
It's that information can be used for good and for evil.
Those people will be toxic regardless. It's just an easier avenue for them to exploit their conscious decision to be an art.
Absolutely. I agree.
The whole guns don't kill people, people kill people. It's like the gun makes it a lot easier.
Interestingly, when you right click somebody's profile now and you go to the stats, it doesn't show the win rates and shipped anymore. I wonder why.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they've changed that. They've recently changed that.
And yet they've changed it so that you can't have a private profile within a clan. Yeah, that's interesting as well.
Some oddities.
But I mean, like, so if you're listening to this and you are concerned about people looking at your statistics, don't forget you can just go and it's not gonna hurt anything. You could just go into your Wargaming profile page and just set your account to private, and then no one can see anything apart from your clan.
No, they'll just change it as like, oh look, hidden stats, of course.
Yeah.
One day I hope somebody all of now let's say we'll take the top clans on both servers. All of them hide their stats. Wait till somebody tries to stat shape them. Oh, sorry, you want to see my stats? Just record the reaction of the guy who's like, I'll unhide my stats. 7% purple. I want to see. I just want to see their face drop. Never gonna happen, but yeah.
Okay, so that's a pretty big topic, and I think we're largely in alignment. So yeah, no, I agree. Yeah,
I wouldn't mind them showing the player rank, so that one's fine. Whatever.
Because yeah, that's in the game. I mean, you can literally just press tab and mouse over someone and it'll show you. So yeah, that's fine. And it's honestly not that important anyway. I mean, so what? I mean, it depends. If someone's now that we have the leagues, like within your league, if someone's on like rank 2 and you're on rank 8, it might just be that they've spent a lot more time than you. Doesn't necessarily mean they're a better player. It just means that they've pressed battle more, potentially. So that's not particularly useful information.
Are you telling me that pressing battle mode doesn't make me a better player?
No, it totally does. Painter.
Okay, because I'm just
Well,
gonna like I'm
that's
just
what
gonna
wargaming
stroke
said,
my
yeah.
gold rank 1 star, like I'm gonna pretend that I'm a good player. Okay, I'm just gonna pretend. All right. Anyway.
Okay, so the next little thing is cosmetically adjusting the way that warnings look. So things like torpedoes and spotted notification, and that's the one I used to run this. Before I started streaming, I used to run a mod pack that turned that little yellow orangey exclamation mark into like a big chunky circly thing. And I used to really like that because it's if you're looking at like the bottom corner of the screen or something, because there's like a torpedo coming or something, like it's really obvious out of the corner of your eye. Because I used to play before I started streaming, I used to play on a 4K screen that's quite big, and it's just really nice to have that really obvious thing. Because I think the in-game detected icon is a little bit subtle, maybe. So I personally quite like that one. You can also mod your torpedo warnings to look like various things. They can be whacking great big red arrows, and you can change various things about the warnings in the game. Apart from turning off the flippin' border warning alarm and the flippin' boost alarm and the flippin' island warning.
Yeah, still no mods of those.
Please, someone.
Yeah, we've tried Stats.
I will
tried.
literally pay you. Please, someone. Mod it. Find it. Nuke it. Please.
Kill it with fire.
Yeah.
These mods, like, I have no problems with them. But I don't use them personally because I think they're massive and gaudy and too distracting. I like the simple detective indicator. The only thing I would like changed is perhaps mod it so, like, this is the thing that we've discussed. If we don't have priority target, I would like it to be a different color indicator. That's the only thing. And I assume that would be doable if you take the captain mod. However they get their information, do you have priority target? Make it a different color. If not, if you targeted and not, there's no number.
Yeah, that is something that I would really like to see. But to me, that's not a mod thing. To me, that's something that needs to be added to the core game client. That's a distinct difference that is missing from the game. It's and that's one of the other reasons why I installed that Captain Skills mod, was so that I can check after I've pressed battle, do I or do I not have priority target on this ship? Because when the first set of shells arrive, it's too late. Okay, let's skip forward a little bit because we're getting on for an hour and a half here. So let's move on to minimaps. This is a really interesting topic. So I currently use the Auto Spy minimap. It's just been updated to version 10, had a bunch of features added to it, and it's already pretty feature rich. I know, Painezor, you've used that Auto Spy minimap mod.
I have, but I've recently swapped away from it just performance reasons.
Yeah. Killerbin, you've never modded the minimap, have you?
Nope.
No.
I currently still do mod the minimap, but all I do is I increase the font size because, as we're all aware, I'm blind. And
yeah, fair enough.
Being able to read the ship names at a larger scale like this does give me an advantage, which is hilarious. But like, this is the thing. Is like, where do you draw the line on what provides an advantage? Like, does providing accessibility to those who need it? Like,
well, like I'm sure Jurek won't mind me talking about this. So Jurek is colorblind, for example.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if there were mods that helped him differentiate, and I know the game does have some colorblindness settings, although he says they're not particularly helpful for him. If there were mods that allowed him to customize the colors of various UI elements, he would probably use them.
I think the minimap one does.
Oh no!
Like,
This is what I want to talk about. So I'm a very visual learner. For me, shape and color is everything. And the default minimap is so uniform in terms of what it shows you, in terms of the range rings, that it is almost completely useless to me. Everything's just yellow. Like, that's completely pointless. For me, being able to have a range ring which is a white circle, and a range ring which is a red thick circle, and a range ring which is a green filled in circle with no border, and all this kind of stuff is really, really, really useful. Because it means that at a glance, I immediately know which one is my radar ring, which one is my hydro ring, so on and so on and so on. And so I first started using AutoSpy for essentially accessibility reasons. It just makes the minimap more accessible to me. However, the AutoSpy minimap is also a very, very capable mod in its own right, because it allows you to do things that the default minimap does not do.
yes, you bloody cheater.
Yes, and the most cheaty, in inverted commas, thing that I think it does is it allows you, for example, to show the AA range rings of your enemy ships. So not only does it allow you to set range rings for you, it allows you to set range rings for every friendly and enemy ship as well. So you can turn on circles for AA rings, you can turn on enemy radar rings, hydro rings, torpedoes. And so, for example, if you're playing a carrier in competitive and you can't be bothered to remember what a Petro's AA range is, you can just turn on the ray rings and then just perfectly fly around the Petro's AA range, just sort of skirting it. And you can tell, like, if there's two cruisers who are, a few map squares apart, can you safely fly between them? Things like that. And of course, the equivalent things for torpedoes and radars and stuff like that. And okay, you could argue you can memorize what the radar ranges are for various cruisers. You can memorize what the torpedo ranges are for destroyers, but you don't have to, because that information is there in that minimap if you want it.
It also saves you having to do quick trigonometry. Like, it's like, I would like to fly my planes. Yeah, what's the distance there? What's the distance there? What's the distance to that? I have to do trigonometry. Hang on. A squared times B squared equals C squared. No, I can't go through between these. You know what I mean? That's like,
yeah, that's certainly. Like, the thing is, like, so with the flying around the cruiser AA thing, you can do that without that range circle, but you have to look sideways because you have to be looking at the range figure that's printed above the ship and make sure that you're keeping that above a certain number. But you can totally do it without the minimap circle. It's just that if you've got the minimap circle, it's so much easier because then you can be looking forwards. I just really love it. It's so customizable. AutoSpy's added a feature in this latest one which also shows you some target information. So when you target a ship, you can have it show you the torpedo range and all that kind of stuff as text rather than as a circle. Yeah, I'd love that minimap, and particularly for accessibility reasons, it's really, really, really useful. If you have any kind of visual issues, it also allows you actually to. And one of the other reasons I started using it was I used to play on a 4K screen before the scaling option was introduced. So when I started playing, there was no UI scaling option in the game options, and so on a 4K screen, everything was scaled for 1080. So your minimap was at best 1/4 of the maximum size that it can be on a 1080 screen, which was teeny. And so it was almost mandatory on a 4K screen to install a minimap mod just so that you could make it bigger. And so that's the main reason why I started using it. And it still allows you to go a little bit bigger than the default, which can be handy. Killerbin, I know you haven't done it, but any thoughts on minimap mods?
I mean, okay, the extra information that some of them provide may give you an unusual advantage over your opponent, like knowing the AA ranges in carriers. Again, it's stuff that a player could learn, but now doesn't need to. So, but as I have no direct experience with any of them, I'm not sure what I would really say on them.
So it's quickly throw in the reason that the circle and the mini map exists now is because originally a lot of these minimap mods had a little X marks a spot marker, which would show you what the circle does now. It shows you in 3D space whereabouts your crosshair is aimed at.
Absolutely.
We managed to convince Wargaming that this is actually cheaty as hell, and they've added the base game because it should have been doing. So maybe we'll get some of these other things. Who knows? We'll talk about them more in a bit, I think, right?
Yeah. Okay. Let's quickly do port mods. So there are some really cool port mods that you can add. Obviously, these are not going to give you an advantage in battle because they're not in battle. But they're just useful utility types, quality of life stuff. And I do use a few of these. There's things like you can install extra ports that have been uninstalled from the game, which is quite nice. But there are also things like, for example, Stingy by default, which is now called Scrooge.
Yeah.
Which stops you from... So the default game client will default to doubloon spending on things like resupply, if there's a doubloon option. It will default to, if there's a drop down that has credits or doubloons, it will default to doubloons. This mod switches it to the other one, to the free version, whatever that is. It's never going to be part of the game client because obviously accidental spending is obviously a revenue stream. But I highly recommend that even if you don't install any other mods, you might want to think about installing this one because it does prevent accidental doubloon spending. It's called Scrooge. Also, another one that I get asked about literally every stream. Server population and resources. Yes, server population and resources adds the server population, the currently logged in server population, which is available normally by the escape menu, but used to be on the main port screen. But it also comes with a display of your current steel and coal next to your credits and doubloons and free XP. And it just looks great. There's no reason why it couldn't be there as part of the vanilla client, but it's not. So that's that one. If you were ever wondering how I get that, that's what that is. So camouflages. I have a love-hate relationship with these camouflage and signal mods. So I'm quite often, because I'm doing a lot of regrinds particularly, I'm quite often hunting for camos which have certain bonuses. So when I'm doing clan battles, I'm looking for ones that have credits. When I'm doing regrinds, I'm looking for ones that have high XP rewards. And I just don't have the kind of brain that can remember all those bonuses and all those different camos. And so I quite often install these camo kind of organization mods that overlay the bonuses over the camo. But I really hate the way they look. Every single one of them looks really ugly. And so I just have this love-hate relationship with that, and I wish they would introduce something into the game that allows you to filter them.
Have you considered not having so many camouflages?
Yes, I have. I can't get rid of them. I so very rarely do I use like Type 5, for example. I'm almost always using some kind of special camo. And like some people can't understand how I don't have any signals, I don't understand how people don't have so many camos, and I have no idea how that situation has arisen.
I mean, basically, just keep pressing battle, and also run the better camouflages on your premium ships. That one probably helps as well, because like the stock camouflage, it's premium ship camouflage. If anything below tier 9, it's a bit crap.
Yeah.
Just run the better ones, and then you burn through them all. It's great.
Yeah. The other mod that I have used once, because as you know, I don't have any signals ever, is remove all signals from all ships. Which is
6 weeks to run.
Kind of handy. Yeah. It last time I ran it, it took, because I've got 400 and something ships. It took 4 hours. Yeah, but I knew it was. I knew it was going to take that long, because I've run it in the past and it takes a long time, and so I just set it to run overnight or whatever it was. But yeah, it took a while. But word of warning: it doesn't work if you have test ships on your account.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to do it. If you're going to use it, you have to use it between the test ship batches. I guess it just gets to one of the test ships and kind of gets stuck because it's not expecting to find a test ship or something. I'm not sure. Anyway, bafflingly, there's one that hides the news.
Yes, because this is exactly what this game needs. Less information.
Less information. There's one that hides your detected status.
What?
There is a mod. I am not kidding. There is a mod in Aslanes that hides the detected indicator.
Aha. Okay.
I would
Is it
really
just the
love
guy
to meet
from Jurassic Park going, you didn't say the magic word as you explode?
I saw that in the list. I'm like, surely that doesn't do what I... No, it does.
I can't see you if you can't see me. Wait, what? No.
Like,
you can't see me if I can't see you.
I would love to have a chat with anyone that's installed that, genuinely. Like, what, you just not like winning? I mean, okay. Yeah, that's the thing. Another one that's quite useful, which has been introduced recently as a result of the commander changes, is when you try to enter battle without a commander, the game pops up and says, you don't have a commander, are you sure? There's actually a mod that will automatically complete that dialogue for you. So if you never want to enter battle without a commander, you can just set it to disallow and it will always say no, which is, I suppose, kind of handy. So yeah, there's quite a few different quality of life port mods. So if you've never modded, if you're not interested in battle mods, you still might like to check out some of the port mods because some of them are quite handy.
Yeah.
Okay, so an area that's close to Killerbin's heart then. This is historical mods. Do you want to talk a little about this, because I think you've done this a little bit?
Well, yeah, like I said, when I first started the game, because of my interest in history, and went on the forums and noticed that like people were making like period correct camos, like right down to like this ship had this scheme in this month, and then 3 months later they repainted it in this scheme. And basically, it would overwrite the visuals of the ship's permanent camos or one of the standard Type 1, Type 2, Type 3s. I think it was usually Type 3, since that was the one that had both the detection and dispersion buffs. So most mod makers made it overwrite that one's visuals because it was the camo a lot of people used.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, like, given a lot of the enthusiasms, there is a massive enthusiasm within certain parts of the World of Warships community for this historical interest, hobby, if you like. But also a certain amount of frustration, and obviously, we hear this a lot from you. When a ship arrives in the game, and you think maybe the history department hasn't quite done things quite right, and so these mods actually allow that community to play with a game which is a bit closer to what they think it should be in terms of visuals, which I think is quite nice. So, for example, there's one I've noted down here. There's one that changes the color of the gun blast bags on USN ships, because obviously someone thinks that they're the wrong color.
Oh, you can go look at USN ships from the period and look at the color of the bags.
Yeah. So I think that one's a great little area, because if you're a history buff and you would like your game to look a bit more accurate, there's a huge list of historical mods.
Absolutely.
In Aslane.
But it's one of the few parts of this topic that gets political.
Of course, yeah, absolutely.
Because some mods some skins you cannot have in the game. You cannot, or you can have them for your own personal use, but you could not distribute them through the official channels because they include sensitive iconography.
Or in the case of non-historical stuff, copyrighted information. So obviously, Wargaming don't have a relationship with all of the franchises that you can find in Aslane.
For example, anyone here has played the Red Alert 3 game, the Japanese battleship that looks like a wacky sci-fi Yamato, for quite a while
Shogun.
was a skin in-game.
It's called Shogun. Don't ask.
Yeah, Shogun. Yeah, the Shogun battleship. And for a while, you could have your Yamato look like Shogun.
Yeah, and there's one of the carriers is also modded to look like Command and Conquer, or it's pretty cool. So, and Pineapple Pizza, indeed. Someone for Mr. G actually made a Pineapple Pizza mod that's now available in Aslanes for FDR, which is great.
Yeah.
Except
Back
there is
to
one
the
slight
things
problem.
that
There's
should
one
be
slight problem, and that is that it also turns all of your bofas on everything into pizza. Yeah. Slight problem. I was like, I installed that. I was like, hang on a minute. Why is my Montana got oh, okay. Yeah. So okay, next one is tracers and shells. You can turn your shells into RTX 3080 graphics cards.
I'm still waiting for somebody to make me a googly eye
Googly
version
eye,
of that.
but the thing is, that's totally possible.
It is.
So
Nobody's done it yet.
if you're listening to this, and you are a mod maker or a tinkerer, and you fancy making Painezor a googly-eyed something, so a googly-eyed camo or a googly-eyed shell mod or something like that,
I think the shells would be hilarious.
he would very much like that. Please get in touch. I think we'd all like that, actually. Yeah, if you I'm sure we could organize a whip round if that was needed. So yeah, I mean those are just cosmetic mods, and although actually with go on, you talk about it.
Well, basically, some of these tracers are a lot more visible. Like at first glance, you've got these bright blue and bright red tracers like coming at you from across the map. It's like, oh, that's AP. Oh, that's HE. I need to dodge that one, not that one. You know what I mean? Like
all the ones that get around the issue where some ships' tracers don't render right from the barrel.
Wait, is that one? Is that
makes it easier to shoot certain notorious cruisers?
Malensks? Minotaurs?
Yes,
Yeah.
but mainly small end.
That's been annoying me since one of the. So I really like visually. I really like the way that the new tracers and shells look. But in terms of gameplay, it does make certain things more difficult. Yes, it is more difficult to tell the difference between the shell types, particularly if the sky is quite bright. It's quite difficult to even see some of the shells if the sky is quite bright. Although I would argue actually that's kind of cool. But particularly this problem of tracers not coming from the guns and actually starting, particularly if you turn your turrets, turn your camera quickly, the particles don't start drawing for a little while. And so I've been trying to do smoke shooting recently, where the tracers are starting like outside the smoke screen.
Oh yeah, one of the CCs like somebody posted a bug report on CC Discord, and there's like 3 kilometers of space. He was in free look. 3 kilometers of space between the smoke screen and where the tracers start appearing, and it's like.
So now not only can you not see the smoke through your binoculars because you've never been able to do that, but now you also can't see the shell tracers, and so you have literally no idea where the ship is other than the minimap. And that annoys me.
That's assuming that they've actually started firing before the smoke was off.
Yeah, that's definitely a mod I think that would give a player who has it a definite advantage.
Yeah,
they can if the mod tells them it's like that's where the ship is.
Well,
because there's no question of like if you're looking straight at a small end, and he's
get this solid line.
Yeah, like you can see. Well, not even like a solid line, just like the standard effect, but it starts where it should start.
I might actually install one of those mods, and just maybe even before I start streaming after this, and actually just see what the difference is, just to remind myself what those actually do, because that is kind of frustrating me at the moment, because one of my favorite things in the game is killing cruisers in their smoke, and currently not having a very easy time of doing that. So
can we also talk about that one really weird one that fires little anime girls?
Yes.
Why is that a thing?
Because the internet is weird.
Like there is a shell mod.
I mean,
there is a shell mod that replaces all of your shells with anime girls, which spin through the air. I don't understand it. I will never understand.
Why are Wargaming probably making a small fortune selling Harakazi 2?
I don't know. It's awful.
Because weebs. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, the shell tracer mods. It's mostly cosmetic, but yeah, it may give in certain situations, it may give people an advantage.
High visibility.
But that also may have an accessibility thing if you've got sight issues. That may help. So there's that side of it as well.
Yeah. Also, like the torpedo wake mod that you were using for a while, but that one's been sort of rectified with the recent patch. Like not as bad as it was. Anyway.
Yeah, I just installed it in case I don't have a problem with the new traces anyway, but Yeah, I just installed it in case anyone was interested because I know a lot of people were having problems with that. Okay, next category, moving on because we're nearly 2 hours, is timers. So this is particularly shot timer, smoke timer, and radar timer. There's also a mod which gives you just an in-game stopwatch that you can literally start and stop whenever you like. So I have used shot timer for years.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, if I had to say one mod that if I play without it, I feel lost, it's that one. Not having a thing that goes 20, 19, 18 every time I fire, really I find quite difficult. Because I don't know when I'm going to go dark. That is something that I think should be in the main game.
I mean, I don't find it that valuable personally.
Really?
Yeah.
I find, as a destroyer main, I find that really weird.
Well, mostly because like
Because you never stop shooting.
Well, there's that, and also because like I know my blooms. Like I'm generally like I'm more likely to get unspotted from the bloom range ring indicator. Like me moving out of my maximum gun range from the next ship than I am from the timer expiring. Or I'm like going to use a line of sight breaker, like an island or something, to break line of sight. That's the things that like. So like the shot timer, it's not that important. The radar timer, on the other hand, I'm sitting there and just letting it think, how long have I been radar for? Oh wait, it's a second radar. Okay,
that's so funny because to me that's completely useless. It's fascinating that two people can have such different opinions.
Well, the radar timer lets you know how many ships are actually radaring you, because you know if you just like blink for a second and you see, actually, why has that gone back down to 3 seconds? I'm being radared again. God damn it! Or you can see, oh, that was 17 seconds exactly. That was the pet row. Like you can get a feel for it, but like I'm not constantly counting every single radar. You know?
Yeah, that's true. But again, I think that's one of those ones that you have to consider, a bit like the traffic light thing. You have to consider the capability of the mod, because obviously if two radars overlap, the mod can't tell the difference between those two, and so it'll just keep counting. So obviously it looks like you've been radared for like 2 minutes when actually it's 3 cruises or whatever.
That sounds like a fun afternoon, doesn't it?
Absolutely. But yeah, no, these timers, I think some of these timers should be in the main game. Would you like to see the radar timer in the game?
Not as much as I'd like to see the score timer in the game.
Score timer, yes, absolutely. So this is one we missed out earlier, actually. So the one that Painezor was referring to is, you might have seen in casting, and certainly when I'm streaming, I usually have it installed as well. And it tells you in specifically domination mode, it tells you which team is going to win if the points and points income currently stay the same. There's a little diamond next to each timer, and the filled in diamond is the team that's going to currently win, and the timer shows you when that team will reach 1,000 points.
The only negative side is it does kill hype a bit, but yeah.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I've heard Mr. G talking about this, where he said, like, oh, no, I would never use that because it ruins the excitement. I actually think the opposite. I think it enhances the excitement, because when
you're staring at the timing, like, it was a close match. I was like, is it?
Like, so,
is it?
There was one match that Painezor and I, that Flambus and I cast over the weekend in COTS, where literally the teams were on equal points, but the ticks were different. Yeah. And so it was literally going green, red, green, red, green, red with every tick. And like, that's really exciting.
Well, yeah, well, that's an edge case.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Like me and Penguin had a game in not King of the Sea, Team League, where there was a good 3 minutes of running away from the caps. And if I knew how score timer worked at the time, like I knew the thing about the filled in diamonds, because this was
you taught me that.
Yeah, like if I knew that, we wouldn't have had anywhere near the hype we had. So it would just be 3 minutes of sailing away when you knew exactly who was going to win. But it's like, oh, is that enough time? Is that enough time? I don't know if that's enough time. But you know, we're just frantically
yeah. I think maybe for players in the match it might ruin the excitement, but certainly for casters casting a tournament, it increases the hype, because
I might artificially like pretend to not know.
No, I think for casting, that information is kind of vital. And we've actually got a question later on related to that, so I'm not going to carry on that topic right now. So we've kind of talked about this one already. So this is like any mod really which shows ship stats like reload, radar range, torque range, all those kind of things. I think we decided that I think most of us are kind of it's in that middle category of, okay, well, it's information that you could get access to if you had a notebook or just memorized it.
It's one of the ones that raises the skill floor. It's like, it's a reduction in the burden of knowledge, basically.
Yeah. There are a whole different bunch of those mods that come in various shapes and sizes that give you over target markers, minimap panels, and team panels, and all sorts of things. So if you want that information, you can get it in a whole bunch of different ways. Okay, the next one is hit point management on your ship. So there's a mod which gives you a more detailed hit point bar, and there's also one that I use which is called Regen Assistant, which is really useful and it's actually mandatory in some competitive teams, which shows you how much of your potential heal you have currently. And I think this one is really important. I also think this one should be part of the main game. Is that one that you've used?
Yeah, I have used it. But at the same time, it's only really useful if you are not playing the same ship repeatedly. If you're swapping between ships wildly, super useful. Otherwise, you just get a feel for how big the grey bar is supposed to be on the contour icon on the bottom left on the compass rose. Like it's one of those things. Where, like,
it never ceases to amaze me. Like if I'm playing something like Lion Conqueror, something that has a super heal, and people aren't used to seeing that regen mod on the screen, they don't know what they're looking at, and you get people coming in chat, and like I've got less than 25% of my potential heal available, and people like in all caps like heal. Like, why would I heal? Like I I'm nowhere near the potential for that heal.
Then you get Deathstroke.
Yeah, well, obviously there is, you have to apply some intelligence to it, but it's just really, really handy especially for the ships that have enhanced heals, for maximizing that hit point use, and that definitely gives you an advantage in ships that like you said, ships you don't play very often, so you're not familiar with how big that grey box should be.
Yeah.
But again, it's something that you could learn what those numbers are, and do a quick bit of mental maths. But again, it as you said, it relieves the burden of information. But there's another one in this category which is kind of interesting, and that is health on enemy turrets.
Yeah, this one. This one.
Yeah, this one. Mm-hmm. This is quite a new one. If you've not looked at the mod packs, I think this one is solely Aslane. I don't think this one has made it into the ModStation yet. What this does is, when you shoot an enemy ship, and I have very quickly tried this to see what it looks like, it gives you a display of the current health, I suppose it's the estimated current health, because it's not actually the current health, the estimated current health of that enemy's turrets, so that you can tell how close you are to disabling the turret, because the mod knows the maximum health of that turret, and it knows what it thinks you've done to that turret, and so it can tell you when you will disable or permanently destroy that turret. I'm not sure how I feel about this one, to be honest.
So tell me about your experiences with it.
I played literally one match with it.
Right.
I uninstalled it because I really didn't like the way that it looked, because it just, like, the GIF from what's the movie? Oh damn, can't remember. But the famous GIF with the white chalk mathematics kind of zooming in as the guy counts under his breath.
Oh, yeah.
Hangover.
Thank you. Yeah, the Hangover GIF with the mathematics. It looks kind of looks like that, because your screen fills up with all these numbers, and I just look, that's horrible. And then I okay, I need to actually pay attention so I can answer questions. And I don't know. We had a discussion about this, and I've obviously misunderstood how module health works, but it struck me that it wasn't like a lot of mods, it's not showing you the actual information. Like the health bars, for example, of the enemy ships aren't showing you the actual current information. It's showing you what the mod thinks is the current information. And so, because it has no access to the actual health on those turrets, it's just making an assumption. And it struck me that it wasn't entirely accurate, that it was visually very annoying, but that if it is actually even vaguely accurate, it's actually kind of cheaty, because if, let's say you're in competitive, you're in a Des Moines versus Salem standoff, which is something that happens quite often. You have to make a decision. I've been this player a few times. So like, you have to make a decision. Do I continue to whittle down that ship with DOT by setting fires, or do I try to use AP to knock out its turrets? If you start firing AP and you have this mod installed, you can tell exactly how many more pens you need in order to knock out the turrets and then destroy them. And so that might actually help you choose which one of those two paths you're going to go down. It would also enable you to say to your caller, hey, in 4 volleys time, I think I'm going to have that Salem's turrets destroyed, for example. So in competitive particularly, I think it gives that player a huge advantage.
I mean, the thing is that we have to take into account here is if you are playing, actually, does it show a different HP? Does preventive maintenance increase the health pool of the things, or just decrease the? I think it doesn't increase the health pool.
No,
It just
it
decreases.
decreases.
When you get to the point where your turrets can be disabled, it reduces the chance that the
right. But the slot
the
one
spinning
mod does
dial
increase.
will fall on disabled.
But the slot one mod does increase the health pool.
I can't remember its exact wording.
Do I have the guess?
Does it?
I don't think it increases module health.
Main battery survivability plus 50%.
So it does.
Yes, it flat out
Okay.
increases the amount of health. So,
Okay.
does that mod tell you about that? Probably.
Well, this is what. So the mod doesn't have access to that information because it doesn't know what the build of the enemy ship is unless that is reflected somewhere in the UI, like for example in the ratings. So if the artillery rating changes based on what that slot upgrade is, then maybe it can tell.
I don't think that module being mounted is represented in the UI.
I don't think so. This is what I'm saying. I don't see how it is accurate. I think it's making a lot of assumptions.
So, but
that's just a lack of knowledge on my part as to how these mods get some of their information.
But the point I was going to make is if you're bow on trading with another Salem and you're like, the super competitive player, I think you know how many shots it takes to disable that turret anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've done it. If you've done it enough, you'll know.
That's
like,
true.
Okay, 15
and also,
salvos in, his turrets are going to start breaking.
The only thing that you need to watch out for is the heal timing, and I think, well, if it shows your own turret's HP, you were more likely to pop a heal.
That's a good point. I didn't notice that it did actually.
Because when you use a damage control, prepare party heal, that also restores health to your turrets. And if you see that your turrets are like getting incredibly low, you may be likely to pop a heal earlier than normal.
If you're in one of those nose-on-nose battles, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And it's like, you'll be in your Salem and you'll be like, oh, my super heal's only halfway. It's only halfway. I don't really need to... Oh, wait, my turret's on 100. Heal! Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like, you're going to panic heal. So that it will change your play style if it... You know what I mean?
No, that's a valid point.
I think it's an interesting category of mod. I think if there was, for example, an overmatch indicator mod, it would fall into the same category of it's just peeling back the cover on the game and showing you some of the internal mechanics that aren't on the surface. And if you know what you're doing, you can take advantage of that information. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I definitely think for people who know what they're talking about and what they're looking at, I think would give them some kind of advantage in certain situations. The rest of the time, it's just a bunch of numbers in your face, and it's really annoying. Yeah. We're going to skip over a few here because we've gone past 2 hours. Anime stuff, environmental stuff. That's fine. That's fine. Actually, we can skip Warships Monitor because we've effectively covered that with the XVM discussion.
Yeah.
So I guess let's go on to listeners' questions. Some of these are really, really good. So I also may skip a couple of these. We'll see how we go. Okay, so from Discord, these were questions submitted in the last couple of days. Be more nice. I love this question because it allows me to talk about one of my favorite things. Be more nice asks, is there any chance that Wargaming will implement the clan logos in game? You know what I'm
No,
going to talk
because
about, don't you?
someone's gonna put a swastika.
Or a penis.
or a penis. So there is an industry standard term within gaming or within community management in general called TTP, time to penis. And basically, if you allow players to upload visual content of any kind into any kind of platform, it will be a matter of minutes before someone puts a phallus in there. And so, I mean, we've kind of seen this with King of the Sea logos a little bit, where people try to sneak naughty things in. So it's a massive overhead. So if you're wargaming and you're going to do any kind of like custom camos, custom decals, custom anything, you would have to do due diligence, particularly because this is a PEGI 7 game. There are definitely kids playing. You would have to vet every single image that gets uploaded, and that's a massive overhead.
And plus, look, if you're getting your clan logos in first, I think CCs were all like to get at least one of their emotes each for an emblem. Like, you know what I mean? You contribute your logo and then one of your emotes on top of it. I think we're front of the queue for that.
One thing that they could do would be cover the cost. So if they work out that it's going to cost, N dollars to vet a logo, they could charge doubloons to do that, and you just upload, you pay your doubloons in the game, and then that goes off to a queue, and they've covered the cost that way. So that could be an option.
Well, something I wanted to point out is like, the end panel from the most recent mode, the April Fool's mode, where I had that little sliding bar on the left hand side, which said like, I think they could use that as like sort of space. If you had clan logos in game, you could use that as a popover for like King of the Sea. It'd be great. It's like this team wins.
Yeah, true.
Be nice, but I don't think it's going to happen.
So be more nice. I wouldn't hold your breath, but it's possible. Takru and also Ken asked a very similar question. Is there a clear distinction between quality of life mods and mods that you guys think give a player an advantage that he shouldn't have? I think we covered this earlier. I think that there are definitely like cosmetic apps or cosmetic mods that we just don't care about. Do what you like. All the way to the other end of the spectrum, where there are mods which are just cheating, and then some which are just on the inside of legal mods which give a massive advantage, and everything in between. It's not a matter of having 3 buckets. It's definitely a sliding scale. And ultimately it's up to Wargaming to decide where that line is drawn, and then we can like or dislike that line. I think I'm pretty happy with where they've drawn the line right now.
There's some questionable ones which have gone a bit. The line is a bit too far. Yeah,
but then like some of them, like the X marks the spot, for example, which they, I hope, bought off of the developer rather than copying it. But they have actually integrated that into the game because almost every person that used mods was installing it, and it did give you an advantage. So now everyone has that. So hopefully there'll be more opportunity for them to do that kind of thing. Kazetsu, also similar questions were submitted by Pseudonym and Sean. What are some mods that you think should be standard in the game, or at least optional without having to install them via a mod station?
Short timer side panels.
Yep.
I would like to see color options in the minimap.
Score timer and side panels are the big 2 that I think should be,
especially for tournaments.
Yeah,
I think there's a whole bunch of stuff they could add to the UI for tournaments if they really wanted to.
Yeah.
And given that they're now backing King of the Sea more directly, I think hopefully we'll see that investment in the future. Killerbin, any that you would like to see?
I think the side panels and the score time is about the only ones I would say are like, I would almost call as like absolutely mandatory.
Yep.
I can't think of any of the other ones really.
Okay. This is a really good question. So Urban Hangman asks, is there any single modification that you would recommend for a new player that would aid them Hangman's personal suggestion would be the Autospy Minimap, is the one I use, because you can set it to display the ranges of radar and smokes and so on. They'd like to know what we think.
Side panels again, but one with all of the information. Like, there's a couple of different versions. I think the hacker-based ones had the ranges of different consumables and torpedoes and armaments and stuff. That's the kind of one where like it helps you get around the burden of knowledge, which is always the biggest hurdle for the new player. I think that's the one they need. Also, stingy by default, Scrooge.
Yeah, I mean that's not going to happen, but yeah, no, I agree with you. Oh, in
I'd
terms
agree
of
as well.
in terms of installing it as a third-party mod, yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. I think in terms of helping to learn the game, having those ranges for the ships that are in the current battle is really, really useful. Yeah. Malinux would like better explanations inside the mod installers as to what the mods actually do.
Yeah, that would be nice, wouldn't it? No,
It would
just
be, yeah.
guess.
It's like, but when you go like show mod preview, no preview available.
It's like Zeiss
I'm not
Incline.
installing your mod because I don't know what it does.
It's like Zeiss Incline. You apparently had no idea what it is, and then you heard us say what it does, and you're like, "Really? I need to try this."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have this distinct impression that I don't like playing without it, but I couldn't describe why until you describe what it does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It makes drive-bys easier.
So yeah, no, Malinux absolutely. It would be really nice if the developers had to submit a little paragraph. The problem is that some of the mods developers obviously don't speak English, perhaps, so that's going to be a little bit tricky. But just even having a in their own language, having a little paragraph that you can then copy and paste it and translate would be really useful. In Aslanes, though, by the way, you can actually turn on like image previews, and some of the mods do have screenshots, which are quite handy. Hellburn asks, do you think that the community-developed camo mods like the anime and historic-inspired ones eat into Wargaming's revenue bottom line for selling individual cosmetic items and their willpower for developing new skins altogether?
No.
Interesting question.
Very.
I would probably say no, because throughout the game's life, Wargaming has never really been too interested in the selling of pure cosmetics.
This is the thing is anything that would be potentially eating into their revenue stream, they could just be like, nope, gone, banning that mod. We have a partnership with a company, get copyrights. No, go. They can just eat any mod like that and just say, go buy it. I don't think it's going to eat their revenue stream at all, especially when they have like the ultimate veto. Because Aslanes and the ModStation, the two main sources of mods, like Wargaming vet, so they could just be like, nah.
So let's think of an example. So if someone came up with a cosmetic mod that overlaid the ARP Yamato skin over the Yamato skin, do we think that that would be approved? No, it would not be, because that's a source of revenue for Wargaming that would be therefore effectively available for free. So, but you come up with I don't know, Back to the Future mod pack. Yeah, they're going to let that happen because although it's copyright theft, they don't care because it's not them doing the copyright theft, and so that would probably get approved. Be careful if you're a streamer, by the way, installing stuff which would be copyrighted material. So if you're installing some of these mods which give you anime content, or I don't know, like The Simpsons, this isn't a thing, but like The Simpsons captains or whatever it is, that's not, that's not okay.
Yeah, Killerbin.
So yeah, be careful.
What?
You and your anime mods.
This is a good question. Malinux, where do we start if we want to develop our own mods and eventually have them included in Aslane? I don't know exactly, but I bet if you join Aslane's Discord and you go onto his website, which has got a forum in it, I guarantee there'll be a thread on there somewhere about having submitting mods. But you can actually, if it's cosmetic mods, and I do this with my achievements, you can actually, there's a folder inside the folder structure that gets created when you run Aslanes for the first time, where you can drop a zip, and as long as the structure inside that zip is correct, it will automatically put your files in the right place every time you run the installer. So there's that option as well, if you're just doing it for yourself. So yeah, I would contact Aslane via his website. Ken says, should mods be able to read the API to display information about what hull or module a ship is using, so the build basically, or should players be expected to figure out that information by watching things such as torpedo range in the game? So we've got a
Neither.
couple
That
to
should be
consider.
available stock. This is the sort of information that should be available for everybody just by holding tab and looking at the scoreboard. This information should be, it shouldn't need to be modded. Yeah.
Yeah. I think the fact that you can, like, so for example, with like the example I always pull out is Shima Torp range. The fact that I can install a mod that tells me that Shima is running 20s, that one is running 8s, which, yes, I could get that information by mousing over the ship name and looking at the torpedo rating, and then kind of remembering what that is. But the fact that it's a mod is there that can just convert the number, just give me the damn number.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just those, like, who looks at those actual ratings? No one. So yeah, I agree with you. Just give us the builds.
Yeah. Just give us the whole builds, like commander specs. Tell us the actual damage contribution, spotting contribution, potential. Give me all the actual relevant information instead of
And
just a
then let
random
you-
XP number.
And then let people turn off the stuff they don't want. I would far rather see a UI that had everything enabled and then you just like whittle it down to the things that you need than it doesn't show you anything, which is literally the default. The default overlay in the game is literally show you nothing and you have to press Alt to see it,
Yeah.
which is just dumb. Yeah, yeah. New player experience is not good. Tack Crew asks, considering there is sort of official casters mod pack for King of the Sea, that's certainly a recommended set of mods, why hasn't Wargaming integrated those mods thus far, considering many of them have been around for many years?
I'd have to ask a Wargaming developer.
Yeah, I guess it's just a lack of focus from Wargaming corporately on esports right now. Although with their little experiment with King of the Sea and Verizon, that may be changing. But historically, I mean, we didn't even have spectator mode in the training room until one of the Wargaming employees, who was really kind of personally invested in the competitive scene and really liked it, decided to do something to help. I understand, on their own time, not on clock. So
we honor that man as a saint.
As a lady, actually. I think.
We honor that lady as a saintess.
Yes. So I just don't think they have the investment. I mean, they've said that to them, competitive is just not a revenue stream. They are way more invested in the main battle mode, which is random battles. And so it's just not something that is their focus right now. So I guess that's why. But both, I think all three of us would love to see better casting integration. Yeah,
absolutely.
This is basically the majority of stuff I post on the CC Discord. Is just like, please make this in Spectator. Why is this not in Spectator? Can I have this in Spectator, please? Wargaming, please. Yeah. And I don't get any replies. But
don't get me wrong. Like, the stuff that was introduced for Spectator is much better than it used to be, but it's still got a long way to go to compete with other games which have actual proper esports casting integration directly in the game, including one of the things that I know you like, Painezor, the idea of having instant replays.
Yes, please.
Yes. Okay, lastly, Possum says, now that Wargaming have run a tournament with a cash sponsor, Verizon, I assume, and also obviously King of the Sea, they're sponsoring directly, and is currently running a tournament with a cash prize pool, are the current mod rules for players and consequences for breaking those rules sufficient and fair, or will they need to be made more harsh?
This is the crux of what I wanted to do with the podcast, is the possibility of a King of the Sea without mods. This is what I wanted to have this entire podcast about in the first place. Can you imagine?
Episode 2 coming soon.
No, it's like, can you imagine? Download this client. You have to play on this client. This client has a press account, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But also, it is strictly not moddable. It's going to take a random screenshot, of your game every, I don't know, 37 seconds or something. Completely arbitrary, like a random amount of time. So these can be reviewed in case of, theoretically cheating. This is a $30,000 tournament. This is actual money. To some people, this is life-changing amounts of money. It's probably not, but it's money. It's actual money, which matters to people.
We talked about this last week in terms of, as soon as you involve money, if there's any kind of question of not fair play, one of the things that's potentially under the spotlight is, was that player running any kind of mod, illegal or otherwise, that gave them an advantage? Now you can get around it by saying, okay, the rules for King of the Sea specifically say you may use any mod you like from Aslanes or from the mod station. And so if a player got an advantage because they were using an anime mod, that's fine because it's in the rules. If they were using an illegal hack pack from some forum somewhere, then that's obviously not okay. But how do you know? That's the question.
I know that there is some anti-cheat in place. I can't go into any detail about it because
So I think, like we were saying last time, I think if Wargaming are going to start to take esports a little bit more seriously, and certainly if they're going to put money behind it, they're going to have to take that a little bit more seriously. Because, like we said, like, when there's money involved, people will be people, and while 99.9% of the tournament population may be totally honorable and taking it seriously and just out to have a good time and potentially win some good, honest money, there might be the odd one or two people who aren't.
I would love that as a question for, like, if we do like interviews with a winning team or whatever. Like, what mods did each of your players run?
Yeah,
like, I would love.
Oh, that's a good idea. Actually, maybe we probably could do. Let's see who wins.
Yeah,
we could. Yeah, maybe we could get a team interview. That'd be cool. Actually, good idea. Yeah, I like that idea.
And also ask him, did the introduction of a monetary prize affect anything you did differently?
Well, strangers. Yeah, I decided to play for the first time in 6 months.
Yeah, to fund his costume fund. Yeah.
Yeah. He's got a mild giant robot addiction.
Yeah. Anything else I know you wanted to talk about that more, but anything else you want to add about the COTS and mods?
It's
the no mod COTS sounds nice on paper, but would be almost impossible logistically for Wargaming to organize at the present amount of resources they're willing to put into it.
Unfortunately, I think this is one of those situations where it might take an incident for them to do something. I don't know. I just, if this COTS goes smoothly, and then next COTS, let's say it's $100,000 prize pool. Like how far is it gonna go before I don't know. And I know there are things going on that we don't want to talk about, but yeah, I just think unfortunately it's going to take something bad happening for people to take it seriously. How things like this often work.
It's
IT security often doesn't happen until there's been some kind of breach.
Yeah, pen testing. COTS pen testing.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, as well, is like, if you go from like the comfort of your mods, like you're gonna play worse, simply just the comfort factor. Is this to then say that you're a worse player because you're like not the best at playing with stock UI? You know what I mean? Like, it won't change who won COTS. I'm pretty certain of it.
Totally. So I trying not to read chat, but I have just noticed a comment from Little Fluffy Cow in Twitch chat. Can you not launch the game with all mods disabled? Yes, you can. It's called safe mode. We talked about it earlier. But it's not forced. So one of the things that we mentioned last time we recorded an episode was, what about a King of the Sea that used a modified client that would only let you enter the tournament, like training room or whatever, if you started the game in safe mode? So you had to use the vanilla client. You could not use any mods. That's what we were kind of talking about. Would that be a thing that people were interested in taking part in? Or are our mods so heavily integrated into the way that people play that they couldn't play without them? I suspect if you wave $30,000 in front of them, I suspect they would play.
I'd be interested to know what the World of Warcraft rules are on mods, like for their arena tournaments and things. I would actually have to go look that up. Unfortunately, I can't do it right now, but yeah.
Yeah. Although they may have better client detection.
Yeah.
Because obviously Warships has not been built with that in mind. So.
Yeah, and quite frankly, Wargaming and Blizzard. Although, actually, probably about the same size, really, aren't they?
Yeah, their bank balance may not be the same, but yeah, no, they probably are. Cool. Okay. So to close out then, after 2.5 hours, is I just want to earlier we went over individually what our feelings were about mods, and I think we were largely all in about the same place. I think Killerbin's maybe a little bit more conservative than me and Painezor. I think me and Painezor think that cosmetics are fine. I think all three of us think that the very close to the boundary of being cheating is something that we're not very comfortable with, but there's a few mods that we use anyway, potentially. And then the stuff in the middle is kind of, okay, yeah, it's just giving players information that they could get anyway. Has this discussion changed any of our opinions?
I think I'm a lot more lax when it comes to random battles, but I think I would like to see it all tightened up when it comes to competitive, and I think this discussion is just further pushed me in that direction. I'm more relaxed about what's acceptable in random battles, but I think I'm striving for more stringency in competitive modes.
I was going to say exactly the same thing. So I think mods are available. The ModStation is really easy to install and use, by the way. So if there's stuff available in the ModStation, I think that's fair game because literally anyone can install it and use it really, really easily. It updates it all for you. It's super easy. Aslane's is a little bit more technically difficult to use. But yeah, I'm with you. In competitive, I think it should be not even playing field is the wrong word because again, you could make the argument, okay, anyone can use those mods, but that just doesn't feel right for me for a serious competitive environment. I think I would prefer that the players were forced to play using the vanilla client. Because then it's definitely a completely even playing field.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
But that's you saying that as someone who doesn't really use any mods. So
yeah, well,
I'd like to talk to someone who plays like Snackman, for example. His client is pretty heavily modded. So would he feel that he would be at a disadvantage being forced to play with a non-modded client? I think he probably would.
At the same time, then you're bringing in if this modded client, completely vanilla client, would ensure the removal of the illicit mods as well, I think they'd be down for it.
That's the thing, is because the client would probably only be able to ban the mods that are approved because they know what those are. But it would be probably easier to therefore detect illicit mods because there would be something obviously off.
Well, yeah, like I say, you could have inbuilt methods to detect, if you have tournament level, let's say for everything past the round of 16, you have people manually reviewing screenshots taken by the client and uploaded somewhere. It's going to be pretty hard to mask that.
Yeah, they would need to do some pretty heavy development work in the background.
Cool though.
It would be cool, and I do wonder whether I think what's happening right now, like I said last time, is that Wargaming are essentially just dipping their foot into whether they want to do serious esports with World of Warships, and they're probably not going to want to put that development effort in right now. But if they continue doing it, if it's successful, then maybe that's something that they'll do in the future.
Option two, I think fly everyone out for a live event. Good luck.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. But I mean, good luck doing that with, was it 136 teams?
This is for the later stages. I was specifically on about
yeah, you can cheat at the beginning, but it's not okay at the end.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, legitimately, yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you because then Wargaming can provide vanilla machines that are set up in a certain way, and maybe the players can request certain mods to be installed or whatever. Yeah, no, that's definitely a thing, but obviously at the moment with COVID, that's totally not possible.
Right. Otherwise, we'd be in Prague right now, Stats.
We would be having pork knuckles and beer. Oh well.
Oh, the pork knuckle was so good.
I'd be fucking
so nice.
I am so annoyed that I couldn't go. Anyway,
I found out that I would have got the plane ticket, and I'm now sad.
Yeah, absolutely. I had the plane ticket, not physically, but I had it digitally in my hand. I was so annoyed. That was literally a week before lockdown started. Oh well, never mind. Soon, right? We're gonna close out there, I think, because it has been quite a long podcast. but that's fine because it's been an interesting discussion. So that brings us to the end of this 7th episode of StatsThonk. Many thanks to my co-hosts and fellow Twitch partners, Killerbin and Painezor, for joining me. Thank you both.
Always a pleasure.
Yeah, always a pleasure indeed. You can find the links to their channels in the description for this episode where that is available. You can simply go to twitch.tv/Killerbin and twitch.tv/Painezor with an E in the middle, and you can drop them both a follow. Killerbin generally streams Warships on Mondays, and sometimes he does War Thunder at the weekends when COTS isn't on. And Painezor generally streams Warships on Thursday nights. We are in the middle of King of the Sea right now, so you can catch EU matches on mine and Painezor's channels over the next few weekends and during the afternoons in the EU time. Killerbin will also be playing as part of Throw Clan team, so best of luck to him and the rest of the team, and also to all the other teams who are still running.
Like Axis.
If you've enjoyed this episode, please do subscribe on whichever platform you're listening on. If you've listened on YouTube and you would like a more convenient way of listening, then this podcast is available also on Podbean, Amazon Music, Spotify, Google Podcasts, iTunes, and basically anywhere else that you can find podcasts. And we'll try to get out a new episode once every fortnight, but during things like COTS, it's obviously going to be a bit up in the air, but we will try. Many thanks to those who submitted questions for this episode via Discord. If you'd like to submit a question, please do keep an eye out in the future for other question submissions on future topics. And just keep an eye on the Discord and you'll see the channel. If you've also got an idea for a topic that you'd like to hear us do, please do get in touch because we're always looking for ideas. I've been Stats. You can find me at twitch.tv/StatsBloke on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. Take care of each other, and we'll speak to you soon.